Roseville Township Board's study session. The topic tonight is our budget for the 2021-2022 year. And I'd like to start off the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is, come on up, Ann. Ann's going to run through for us how all this runs. I just wanted to tell everybody this is a little different than we normally do it. Most years that I've been here, we've done the study session actually before a meeting, which obviously means we don't have a lot of time to go through it. And I think this is important enough that we need to spend the time on it, as well as the fact that we have 4 new board members. So I thought this was a better way for us to do it. Having said that, I just want to add, especially for the new board members, that although we're here tonight and we're going to discuss it, you don't feel like you have to ask all your questions tonight or know everything, or that when we walk out this is done. One of the reasons for having it this early in the month is so you can listen to what's said from the department heads, and take your budget home, look it over, and chances are you're going to come up with questions, later in the week or whatever, and you will have the time to get back to those various heads to get answers to your questions or make recommendations for changes. So I wanted to give us enough time to do that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ann, who's kind of going to give us an outline of how this works.
Good evening. I think I can say this is my 25th budget. So time, sometimes it seems like yesterday and sometimes it seems like a long time. But so here, before you, I know, like I said, there's a couple new board members. All the front pages in your budget book are the budgets that the managers have put together, and they were reviewed with the executive board of the clerk, treasurer, and supervisor. Clerk, when she wasn't able to attend, so it was just the 2 of them. And we went through with the managers, so that's the first part of this when we came up with the budget that's being presented for review. So the front part are all the budgets of all the different funds, and the second part of it is the trends. So a lot of times we work from history. It's a pretty good picture of where we will be in the next year. So we'll have the managers come up. Basically, we'll have the 5 major components and players. We'll have the police chief, the fire chief, the recreation director, the airport director, and the DPW director. So they'll come up and present their budgets, and like I said, it was probably not going to be a line for line. They'll probably go over some of their major changes and issues that they are being dealt with in the next fiscal year. And then at the end of it, we'll put together the general fund and see where we stand in our general fund. So we'll proceed in that way, and I think the rec director, Kim O'Farrell, will be our first budget that will be presented.
As Kim's coming up, I will say I think everybody knows my stance on fiscal responsibility and budgets. I'm conservative, and I asked our department heads to try to come as close as possible to a balanced budget, and I'm pleased to say that we only have 2 departments that had to go into their prior year's earnings to balance the budget, and our general fund is balanced without going into prior year's earnings. So we did a lot of work to get where we are today.
Yep. Have her we'll start with page 42 of your budget book.
Can you please also speak right into the mic?
Yep.
It's hard to hear.
Uta, can you hear me okay?
That's beautiful.
Okay,
Thank you.
great.
Thank
Good
you.
evening, board.
42.
Presenting the 2021-22 Recreation Department budget at $1,022,925. That is our total budget. Some of the changes that I have made to this particular budget is putting all the salaries into one area. That is our full-time people, and I know all of you have looked through the budget, so I'm just doing some bullet points before I go through it. And I've based this budget on the season 2019 and also on 2020. When I put together a budget, I kind of take kind of a middle of the revenues that were earned, the expenses. Most of you know that I'm a very conservative manager. I do like to have a savings account, especially in recreation. Anything can go wrong upon opening a golf course, opening a swimming pool, and the marina. So very conservative when I put my budget together, and I can go through that with you now. So as you can see on the front cover, that's the summary sheet. And again, I kind of have cost centers, and Ann and I have talked about, do we continue with cost centers? I believe they are important to this budget. But again, with the salaries, we felt that putting them in one particular spot makes sense. So that's the biggest change that we made. On page 43, I know golf is always kind of a hot topic. We had a great year last year, brought in roughly 33,000 additional revenue, and very conservative on the expenses, and we were able to balance at least this past fiscal cycle with some carryover as well, so that's a positive. It went very high on the daily greens fees. We're facing the same situation with COVID and the bridge being closed. The golf course was used very much this past season, so I'm anticipating that to have high revenues. And again, if it wasn't for my staff out there with Mark and the guys doing what they do and mowing and everything, being very conservative on those expenses, we have done irrigation improvements starting when I first arrived in 2017. And irrigation improvements we do in phases. We do those in steps. It's not, we're going to fix the entire irrigation, but replacing heads and those types of things each year, about $5,000 to $10,000 of repairs and irrigation. Any questions on golf?
Well, wait a minute. You're
Yep.
losing me. I'm
on page 43, just the golf revenues.
So that's golf revenues,
Yeah.
but you were talking expenses. That's what lost me.
Okay, so I guess the way I'm presenting it, it's hard because the way this is laid out is just a summary of
And
the actual
if
area.
you could follow your
Absolutely.
pages because of the so that the people,
Okay.
the new people can
Okay,
follow
so
along.
I'll just stay with the revenues. Any questions on golf revenues? Okay, if not, we will go to the next page. That's our marina revenues. With the dock improvements, we are anticipating filling all the piers this year, other than Pier 4. That is the pier that is still under evaluation. We were able to build up Pier 2, 3, and 5, utilizing $50,000 of the Recreation Department budget and the loan from the general fund for $75,000, which is noted in this budget book. So those are our marina revenues. Any questions on that? And those usually stay about the same because the docks are still the same, the fees are still the same, so we anticipate everything to still be about the same. Okay, page 45, pool revenues. Good thing is, and I know we've been waiting for some checks and so forth, but we did get the grant dollar check reimbursement for the pool heater, so that was actually deposited in this budget, so that's a good thing. Pool fees, the pool was utilized a lot. We were one of the only pools that opened downriver during COVID, and we anticipate to open again this year. So that, again, is pretty much staying the same. Again, you'll see a little bit of a drop in the swimming lessons. Again, parents are still a little bit hesitant on, do we put our kids in swimming? Do we not? Do we send them to camp? So when I'm budgeting the programming side of this budget, it will be a little bit conservative based upon communication with our residents who have called in asking about COVID procedures, those types of things. And we did take a big hit on swimming lessons in the revenue line this past summer due to COVID. So conservative on that. Concessions, that was always a big hit at the pool. And again, the prices of things are going to go up just a little bit at the pool. We had to do an increase in the memberships due to the cleaning of COVID, the COVID supplies that we have to clean, the chairs, the bathhouse, all those types of things. And we will continue to do that for the safety of our residents this year. Clean of the golf carts, all of that. So, any questions on pool revenue? Okay. Page 46, property taxes estimated at $569,225. And as we go through this, again, a lot of the revenue that we're going to talk about, these are, our program lines with our events, with aerobics, any senior programming, camps, those types of things. It's going to be dependent on how our residents feel about sending our kids to the programs. Again, our goal is to follow safety protocols with COVID and CDC to make sure kids are safe. And again, that's kind of that, do we know what's going to happen? Rec did take a hit on a lot of lost revenue last year, but again, I'm anticipating that our residents will engage this year with masks and social distancing. So those numbers there is kind of a guesstimation of what I'm feeling. And again, last year we weren't able to do the summer camp. This year, our day camp will be in full operation out at Centennial Farm and Water's Edge. We are planning to do volleyball camp, volleyball leagues. The advantage Rec has is all of our amenities are outside. Volleyball, basketball, swimming, golf. So, that's a positive for the recreation department. Any questions on page 46? And also, if you see on the top of page 46 where it says rink, that $4,000, we are still in discussions with the Hockey Association, and they are still anticipating leasing the rink, so that's where that $4,000 would be inserted into the budget. And they're looking to hopefully sign that lease agreement in July. That is the last communication we had from them. So if you had questions about where that revenue would come from. Okay, page 47. Again, this is just, carryover. It's a balanced carryover. And then the rent income, that's rentals at the activity center at the farm. Again, we took a big hit on that due to COVID and the restrictions on indoor gatherings. Things are loosening up. And people are renting the farm. We're very, very packed for the summer with the pavilion and graduation parties. So that's where that line comes from, is rentals at the activity center at the farm. Page 48, excuse me, festival. We just recently made a decision to make an attempt to have festival this year. It will definitely be on a smaller scale. It will not be the big thing that we're used to, due to the fact the bridge is closed and also COVID is still here. So we are planning a festival for this community on a very small scale. And we're putting some things together right now. It'll be, limited rides. We plan to have the vendors inside the hangar there. We plan to have some bands. We plan to have some spirits going on, and plan to have fireworks. So it will be on a very, very small scale. That's why that budget is cut down to where you see that
Kim,
at.
are
Yes.
you still planning it for 3 days?
We have not decided that right now. We know it'll be definitely Friday and Saturday. I know it's posted that we will have Sunday, but we haven't met on that.
We may change it.
Yeah, we may change that. So, and again, it's try to balance the COVID and all the things going on. So, but we'll fine tune that, and everything will definitely be presented. So, and we'll have a chit chat on that too. Okay. Any questions on festival? 49 is the restaurant. Smokey's has agreed to stay with us, which is good news, and that is the lease payment for the year is $36,000. Estimated electric, again, they have been paying the 65% of the electric. So that is where that 11.5 is coming from. I bill them each month once I receive the bill, and they pay it within 24 hours, and that gets deposited into the restaurant lease line. Page 50. Golf course expenses. There's a lot there. And as you can see, the first line, we have taken out the full-time salary there, and once we get to a little bit further into this budget, you'll see where those are inserted. And just going down with our supplies, again, this is just an estimate of the last 2 to 3 years. Those where those numbers are coming from. Obviously, we did overshoot a few lines with equipment rental. There was some breakdowns, and we did have to do some work. So again, some of these numbers are based upon, a little bit higher than that was budgeted last year because of what happened. And I know we've all done budgets, and you can understand my reasoning behind that too. And the range did very well last year. I anticipate that to do well again this year. And the one addition that we are putting out at the range, we did lose a lot of balls last year into the brush that's along Bellevue Road. We are putting up I don't want to say a fence, but netting along that one side to contain the balls inside the range area. So that should eliminate us purchasing more range balls. And we did have some theft last year. People were stealing the golf balls. So hopefully that will not happen this year. Any questions on the expenses for the golf course? Okay. Yes, Uta?
I had to unmute myself. Kim, how are you getting by without the full-time position?
The full-time position is still there. We had just moved them into the recreation department expense line. And that's a little bit towards the end of the budget.
Ute,
Go ahead,
Kim,
David.
one of the reasons that we decided to present it this way is that the golf revenue is revenue only from golf. The expenses that you see are strictly all golf expenses. And then all those full-time salaries are moved over into, under the general rec expenses. It gives you a little clearer picture of whether the golf course and the marina are making money all by themselves. I think it presents a better picture of the, what's actually going on at the golf course or the marina or the pool.
And in the past budgets, there was a percentage allocated, whether it was my salary or Mark or Jean, there was a percentage allocated to each cost center. So, and I like to see it all in one because then you can get a clear picture of exactly what that area is producing. So that's kind of why we made that change. Does that
So
answer?
let me ask you a question.
Hi, Mike.
Hi. So the salaries that are not allocated to the various departments or profit centers, are they all fixed? I mean, are they like, when you say, and when I say fixed, I mean, if we didn't have the golf course, would we, if we had fixed 5 right now, I'm just throwing a number out
Yeah, we have
there,
a fixed 4. And
would one go away?
No, there's 4 full-time people in the rec department, and it's 4 fixed.
And that was one of the reasons for doing it that
Right.
way, because it didn't give a clear picture
Picture
of what, for instance, golf was doing, because that salary and benefits were going to be there, and it was showing in golf especially this big loss, when in fact you could get rid of golf and you'd still have 75% of your cost, it'd still be there. So it wasn't giving a good picture of what was happening in golf, so or any of the other ones where there were.
4 positions, what are they, the full-time positions?
Myself, the assistant rec manager, which is Annette Peltz, Mark Tiso, and Jean Kowalski.
And what do they do?
Mark and Jean are both maintenance. So And again, Mark is more yes, he does mainly the golf course, but he also, if we have a project at the farm, he will go to the farm. If we have a project at the marina, he will go to the marina. Same with Gene. So again, to tag a percentage on to what the two fellows are doing, you know, they're doing multiple tasks and multiple cost centers.
But
So-
realistically, if you can tag a percentage on, because that's really how their time is allocated, then they probably should be allocated.
Okay.
My
And this is
opinion.
just something new.
The manager and assistant manager, I get it completely. You know, it's really hard to allocate that, but if they're more of a direct cost related to a specific profit center, then from my background, you know, it would make sense to allocate. I don't know, Ann, what you're.
Yeah, let me just tell you my history. It's all based on the board. In reality, we don't have to have any cost. We just have to have recreation. So we do this for our just planning and purposes. Like, we do allocate some of the DPW guys, and we allocate. Is it a true allocation? No. Can we argue about that allocation? Yes, it's been done in the past. It actually, like, before Kim came along, we would allocate supplies. Electricity. And finally, the director said, I don't even know what my costs are because it's spread all over. I just want, and that's why we created a cost center called 265, which is maintenance, for just those maintenance areas. So it's not right or wrong in any account. It's how we want to do it, and she was more comfortable.
Fine, I'm
let
fine
me know
either-
what my
either
costs
way.
are at the
It's
end of
up
the
to the
day.
board.
So instead of being all spread out, especially, and it's the pleasure of the board really, because the state doesn't care, the accounting, my rules don't care. It's just however you want to present it, because really we just do a cost center budget. It's really, we don't even have to do a line budget per se when we adopt it.
Yeah,
So
my only.
it's just how you want to present
My
it.
only point is that if you're really trying to get a accurate understanding of just, you know, how profitable, if it's cash flow positive versus negative, and you have costs that there's a fair amount of certainty in terms of the breakdown. A lot of them there isn't, I get that, and then they shouldn't be allocated, but the ones where there is a fair amount of certainty, I think if you look at most of your accounting principles, they're going to tell you that those should be allocated.
It truly is
Some of them
one
are.
bank account.
There are some salaries allocated to
Right.
golf.
Particular.
Yeah, the part-time is still
The
there, yeah.
part-time and whatever. But it truly is one bank account.
Just, again, just trying to get a handle on, you know, which departments are doing better relative to others, so on and so forth. If it's kind of hit or miss, then I agree with you completely. But if you have a fair amount of certainty, that, you know, it's 70-30 here, or whatever, then I'd argue that, you know, an allocation would give us a more accurate picture and allow us to make decisions based upon that for, you know, the future of various profit centers, you know, so. Okay.
Okay. Page 51, marina expenses. Again, we have independent contractor, Greg Phillips. That is his salary there. So it's part-time. I don't know if many of you know Greg, but he is the lift operator, and he is the one who puts the boats in and out, and does the winter storage and all of those good things. So, again, I put in 20,000 there, because I do a walkthrough assessment in April. And through the winter, you never know if something came loose with the ice. You just don't know what to expect with where our marina is located. Electrical lines could be cracked from the ice. We could have boards down. There are several boards that have been hit by ice. So that's why that maintenance and repair line is there. We normally have to replace, you know, a dozen boards as we head into the season. So the marina loan is placed in this area. If you can see that at the bottom of page 51. Any questions on the marina expenses?
On the lift operator, does he get a dock too?
He does get a dock.
And
That is included.
That's included in that amount. Okay, thank you.
And it's nice to have him down there because somebody needs to be kind of watching things over. So, yes, he is. I think he's at the end of. Maybe I shouldn't tell him where he is. So I'll keep that quiet. But yes, that is
Yeah,
included.
thank you.
Yeah.
Jim, with capital improvements, line item 994, you have nothing in there, but we've had improvements with electrical and some of the docks. Any anticipated improvements in the near future?
Again, we're focusing on Pier 4 right now. That's the damaged pier. And that, again, I tried to do things in stages. Did I want to do all the docks this year in the middle of COVID? Probably not a good idea, not knowing what to expect. But I am getting an evaluation on Pier 4, and that would be our next move, and also the finger piers on the north side to get those built up too. But again, I really wanted to turn the corner of this fiscal year before I jump into another $50,000 repair. So.
And Carl, last year, that expense was about $15,000.
Talking to your-
Was about $15,000 for this year just ending. So, so the 20,000 is probably a close estimate.
And moving on, page 52. Again, you'll see the part-time salaries. Obviously, with the pool, we have lifeguards. I have an aquatics coordinator out there. We've got swimming instructors and so forth. So that is inserted into that line. And again, with the pool, pool's going to run about the same, I believe. I have not gotten an email on a spike in chemicals, which is our chlorine and acid. So I'm anticipating things to be pretty regular at the pool again this year. Hoping the bathhouse will open. The shade structure project is a go, and that will be started once the structure comes in, and then we'll get that. That'll look very nice, a nice addition to the pool. And then I'm also, as I told my liaison, and the CRC is aware that I'm putting in for additional grant dollars to redo the bathhouse to make it ADA compliant. So I'm going to try to submit for that and get some cash, hopefully in the next 2 years to get that done as well. Any questions on the pool expenses? Okay. Page 53. Page 53 is where on 706, that's the salary line. That's our full-time employees. And we do have some part-time seasonal employees as well that come out of RAC. That would be an additional person helping out with the grounds. I'm planning to bring on another part-timer for the summer to help with some maintenance issues out at the farm. The marina needs cleaned up daily. And in the past, I've had an upwards of 3, if not 4, college students working for us. Last year, we had none. This year, I'm looking to hire one person to help out with some cleaning and those types of things. So that's where that line is. The overtime line comes out of there, and that's with our 2 union employees. If we have a break, which we've had a few breaks at the course, whether on a Saturday or Sunday, that is also snow plowing. So there's the overtime line for that as well. That we do need to we do maintain our properties with snow plow and water mains. So, and then again with the recreation department, again staying pretty much the same. You can kind of work your way down, and all the estimates with FICA, the uniform. We do have 2 union employees. You know, that's in the budget as well. The vision and the dental, it's all coming out of here. Page 53, or I'm sorry, page 54. Continuing on, again, with these expenditures, pretty much balancing what I've spent in the past and knowing and forecasting what I plan to spend this year. Again, I'm very conservative. I budget kind of high on the expended side, but my goal is to always come in a little bit less than what I am budgeting, because I do try to, instruct my staff, let's buy what we need, not what we want, and prioritize our capital improvements and prioritize the things that we need to keep the department up and running. And we do focus on preventative maintenance, those types of things. So if you see on the bottom of page 54, this year we will put $10,000 towards the rink debt. We were able to put that in there. And maybe some more, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I am going to have the rink evaluated again. I'm a little concerned about that, the north end. So I have some communications with Rains and try to get that looked at. But we did have ice this year. We had about 2 weeks of ice, but I think that's over. So so that's kind of where we're at with that. So we're moving forward with getting that debt paid off as well. And trying to see if there's anything else. You can see I've inserted $8,000 for the master plan. That's trying to get the master plan finalized to present to the board either October or November of this year. And that's contracted services. I don't feel we're going to be spending that much. We've got a lot of things already inserted, and Brian's not charging me too much to have that done. So, and then also new to this is the COVID supplies. And I think if you see on page 54, is that supposed to be 500? 761.
500, yep.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a 500. I know I caught that the other day, and we'll fine tune that. But I am tracking all the COVID supplies because I received a grant for $8,000 towards COVID supplies. So we have to make a line item for that for reimbursement from SMART. So page 55. We have eliminated, and I think I'm just going to take that out, and I want to eliminate the senior center because we're going to try. I want to just separate this budget with youth and adult. So that 851, 890, we're going to just scratch that off of there. It gets a little confusing. We had a lot of lines when I first got here. And I like to shrink the budget a little bit so there's not too many account numbers. So that will be eliminated from the budget, 851, 890. And if you can look down right below general youth, general adult and the seniors are going to be classified in the same line because it's all adults. So it makes sense to just keep them in there. So any questions on page 55? Okay. Page 56, balance coming over. Promotion, that's the magazine, the profile magazine. I'm looking to do 2 of those per year, and to print 2 profiles, it's roughly about $8,000. I think everyone knows the magazine. We've all seen that. And it should be hitting the household, I think the first week of May, with all our programming for the summer and our pricing.
Got ours today.
Well, there's 2 different books out there, I think.
This was the profile came today.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's the Downriver one. Yeah. So Rec has their own magazine, and it's called the Rec Profile.
Okay.
Yeah.
The old channels.
Yeah.
Profile now.
Yeah. So, page 56, again, I still inserted the memberships and dues, which I didn't participate this year in that. Conferences and workshops, there's 1,000 there. And a lot of things are now online, which is good. We're not sending my staff to go to a conference, but a lot of the NRPA, National Parks, and Michigan Parks are doing a lot of things online, so things are a lot cheaper. So I don't expect to have $1,000 in conferences and workshops, but I just wanted to put that in there in case things shift. And also in the line 976, that's a savings account line of $83,000. In the event that minimum wage increases, and I believe it didn't, I think it just got voted down. I was worried about that $15 an hour. Also damages, and if a capital improvement comes across, we have some money there to do what we need to do, which is a good thing. So Any questions on page 56?
Right now, that line that you just talked about is kind of a placeholder. There's no, you may not
We
spend
may
a
not,
dime.
we may not spend it, yeah. But again, I like, it's
good to have it
It's
there.
good to have it. And again, we're moving forward with those fences at the farm. I may, in the fall, say we're doing well, come to the board and say, can we go to phase 2 on the replacement of the fences? So it's good to have there. Okay, page 57, festival expenditures. Again, we're downsizing, so I think we went from 75,000 to 41,000 with the full year of everything. Back in, what was that, 2019 was our big festival. Last year we did not have a festival. So, telling Chad, really watch our spending. And he's making very good decisions, which is great. And we got this, I think.
Yeah, the 50,000 from last year was
the budget.
a budget that never happened.
Right.
But it was a downsized festival last year as well.
That's
why
correct.
it's 50
Right.
from last
But
year.
yeah, and then in 19 it was 75.
Right.
20
right.
was 50.
The regular
Now
is,
we're where we're at. So, page 58. Just general expenses that we have are our electric, our gas, our telephone, insurance, maintenance and repair, and that's to the Water's Edge complex. That 10,000 can be used, like we had that brick wall kind of fall in front of smoke, those types of things. If the fence breaks at the pool, I can, it's all kind of one, we've got a lot of money in the maintenance and repair lines in each cost center. If you didn't, that's a good thing to have because things do break, things are getting old. So we're prepared to have the dollars to repair those things. Computer network, that's remote access with Cygnus, 10,000. Any questions on 58? Okay, page 59. This is our Centennial Farm. Kind of see where the revenues come in from the cell tower. The overall operating is 133,725. Our prior year resource is 65,000. I'm jumping ahead, sorry. That's on page 60. And then on page 61 is the actual budget to maintain Centennial Farm. I increased the line for maintenance and repairs to 40,000. And again, you can kind of see the things that are needed to maintain the farm: grass cutting, tree removal. I just had a bunch of, there were some really dead trees that could have been harmful for people walking. I'm having stump grinding done out there. We've tried to fix these fences. It's a lot of fence out there. Take a walk. It's a lot. And again, I'm moving forward with those phases to repair the fences because it's a big ticket item. And Gina's out there replacing the boards as fast as you can get them up. So, any questions on the farm? Down at the bottom in this year's budget is the fountain repair at 15.2. And again, we are moving closer to making a decision on what we will move forward with the fountain. The CRC approved a utility vehicle out there. We're looking at a small John Deere just so we can take care of the grounds, pick up the sticks, make sure we can get around the property. Can't take a truck all the way through that property, and that is definitely needed out there. And obviously, phase 1 for the fences at 52,000 is in this budget, and the RFP is being prepared as we speak. And that concludes the rec budget. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes, sir. So, is there a combined income statement for all the various profit centers and all the administrative costs that are separate, like total revenue coming in and?
Summary?
Yeah, where's that? What
The
page?
first page of it,
Yeah, the summary sheet is on page 42.
42.
Yeah.
Revenues, expenses. Revenues and expenses equal each other? So is there like a reserve number here or something that makes all that work?
That's kind of that 82,000 that she was ahead of the ballgame.
Okay, where is
Kind of
that?
makes it work, what that she talked about,
Yep.
page. And so
Is
I
it-
will,
Can you see it on here somewhere or no?
Not on the summary sheet, no.
on page 56, remember we
Yeah,
talked
it's on
about that
56.
83,000 of expenses, there was reserve.
Wait, no, it's not. Is it 56? No, wait a minute.
Okay, the 83. There it
Right.
is.
So we do a balanced budget, and that's what we're being presented with. That's her difference for the current year. She does have fund balance available of approximately 180,000 that's sitting in fund balance that we do not budget unless absolutely necessary.
And for Mike and the new guys, a balanced budget for the state means revenues equal expenses. They do not care if you're using
Right.
prior year's resources to
Right.
balance it out. Truly, if you're using that, you don't have a balanced budget. But that for this is state purposes, and so if you are using it's going to be in there, and it's going to be considered a balanced budget for what we have to do for the state.
Correct. And like the little funds, like we'll go through, like the Centennial Farm, we do balance, we put in prior year resources so we know where we are. But because she gets most of her revenue from a tax base, we
Right.
do not put our reserve in there. Only when the funds are like a capital project fund, then we do have the 65 reserve. That's all that's available.
So there is a reserve somewhere else above and beyond this 80.
There's a fund balance, yeah, she
Above
has
beyond the 83.
That is correct.
Right, and where would I see that? It just-
That's in the audited financial statements. It's not
Okay,
in this
so we're not
budget
gonna
being
see it
presented.
here.
No.
It's, okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kim.
Yep.
Thanks, Kim.
Enjoy your evening.
Good evening, Board. Brent Harden, representing the Grosville Police Department.
Hey, Brett.
All right.
Right.
And his pages are, we'll do the revenue. Well, you got the page numbers, right?
I've
So
got page 8 on the revenues.
Page 8.
Page 8 on the revenues.
You sound good, Brent, thank you.
All right, I'm going to start on page 8 at the top. Animal licenses, we're getting an intake of around 1,800 this year. That'll keep us on par with the 2,000. Liquor tax is a fixed income that we always have to budget for. It's about $600 or $6,000. Our PBT testing, that's not really existent much anymore. However, our applicant fingerprinting has increased this year. More so because of COVID, the teachers have been inundating us with getting applications because of the remote learning that has gone on with COVID. So we've seen an increase in applicant fingerprinting. There's a line item for sale of police vehicles. We're getting rid of 2 SUV sport utility vehicles, and we'll bringing on about 5 newer vehicles online, which will hopefully reduce the maintenance costs that we're incurring on the police department because of our roads. So I'll go deeper into that as we progress. And then our operating transfers in from the fire department, that's for our fire and police dispatch. The fire department allocates a 25% contribution to our dispatch center to supplement for those prices. On page 24, I'm going to reflect you to. At the top, 803, independent contractors, that's what we pay to do the vehicle transfer over of specialty equipment that's in the police vehicles. This comes down to shields, police radios, sirens, lighting and equipment, so that's what that is utilized for. We have 2 vehicles that are new that are coming online right now, which we're using some of last year's budget and then some of the oncoming budget for the next fiscal period. We also have another vehicle on order. I just want you to be aware with vehicles, we prior to COVID, we ordered a vehicle a year ago, not last November, but the previous November, but we didn't get the vehicle until almost December of last year. So we're being proactive of just trying to line up the delivery of the vehicles with the automotive companies because of their delivery issues that we had. So we do use independent contractors to change those vehicle equipment from vehicle to vehicle. Maintenance custodial, we're at about $11,200 right now for the fiscal period. We're budgeting for $14,000 for the next. Healthcare and exams, we have many potential retirees. Some people that I know may stay and some people may leave. We do have a dispatcher that June 1st has indicated that she's going to be retiring. So we're going to be paying for health exams, drug screenings, and psychological exams that are required for that. So we're preparing, and we increased that budget amount a little bit just in anticipation of doing the backgrounds that we need to do for those hirees.
How many did you say were potentially?
Well, there's 4 potential that could be, and that doesn't include the dispatcher right now. So 5, and then so I'd say between 5 and 6 on the worst case scenario, but about 3 to 4 right now. Vehicle allowance is not applicable anymore. Our jail expenses for this year were just at $826. We budgeted $1,000 for that annually. Insurance and bonds, that's a static number that Ann reflects upon, so we don't have control over that. One thing that we do have concern about is electricity and gas. Right now, we are under the budget for this fiscal year, but we are conscious of the potential increase in energy prices in the future. So we are concerned about that to see if some type of inflation may cause that factor to increase. Let me reflect you back to page 25 now. And at the top of that, I just want to reflect on the gun range. The current conditions with COVID and then sourcing ammunition and stuff from, actually the primers were made predominantly in China. So internationally and globally, there's been a reduction in the accessibility of ammunition. With the gun range, with the supplies, we were able to get a large amount of ammunition for our department for training and for duty ammunition before the resources exhausted themselves. So we're in a good place. I'm very conscious that there are other departments, and even including SWAT teams right now, that cannot source ammunition, and they're running into some problems. So we've been proactive on that. We're in a safe place, I can say right now, but I wanted the board to be aware of that. Water, that's been a static price right now. We've just paid about $793 for water with a budgeted amount of $1,000. Building maintenance, we're still within the ballpark. We do split those with the fire department. A lot of things are joint, so it alleviates cost pressures on both departments that we share the costs on that. The line item is 934.1. It's on maintenance of computer and software. With that, these are subscription fees that we have with our software. We went over a little bit this year. What's happening is we have computer systems that are in a consortium with the Downriver Community Conference and with other police and fire departments. With that electronic system that we operate on for our police records and such, we transferred from a company that was called New World. Now it's called Tyler Technologies. What they've done is they've added what we call Metro North or Downriver North, which is north of Pennsylvania Road. There were additional police departments that were on a different system. So the line of demarcation was essentially on Pennsylvania Road. So you had Downriver South and Downriver North. 5 of those jurisdictions in the north end are coming on our computer system. So it would reduce our costs. However, then what happened was that the company, Tyler Technologies, has additional modules, all right? So they want to sell you product. Well, the modules will allow us to operate our jail system, the correctional operations that we have. So there's a database for that. Also, what we have is a computer ticket writing software, and with that ticket writing software, we used to have an older program that we're phasing out into a new one that will be able to interoperate with the database that we have for the whole totality of the new computer system. So it's all integrating, it's bringing everything together. So there was an increased cost. Right now we're paying an additional $5,000 during this fiscal year, and next year there'll be one more additional cost for that subscription fee to get everything up to where it needs to be. The next one is the line item of 935, maintenance special equipment. These are subscription and maintenance costs that we pay for, essentially to run the camera systems that we have on the bridges, on Macomb Street, at Sunrise Park. These are payments that we pay to keep that system operating and to keep all of the network pricing that we have to be conscious of taken care of. We did this year, instead of buying new laptops, what we did was we introduced an extended warranty. What that extended warranty is going to do is allow us to keep these laptops for an extra 3 years by the warranty that we purchased. So we're hoping to be cost effective instead of outfitting the police department with new computers, that we're going to be able to continue to operate those computers, which are in pretty good shape, with this extended warranty, which will be significantly less than the cost would be to replace the computers.
And the computers, any new software that comes out, you know how they upgrade all the software, they'll be able to handle that, correct?
Yes, they are up to date, and the software does have the capacity. Let me rephrase that. The hardware system of the computers can handle the software capacity as they upgrade, yes.
Okay.
I was just going to say, I hope you have better laptops than what we have as trustees. It takes mine 20 minutes to turn on.
Detective Vasquez is remarkable in his computer skills. He learned it from Lieutenant Bo. And what has transpired is that for some of the computer towers that we have within the building, he's actually built computers, which was cheaper than actually purchasing them. And as for the laptops, he is able to configure the ones that meet our needs and meet the price criteria. The next one on maintenance and grounds, this includes fertilizer, landscape, and snow removal. That's over this year for many factors, but we shared that. That's right now at $5,800. We had budgeted last year of $4,000. We don't anticipate that the next fiscal year will have that much of an increase. Maintenance in vehicles, I'm going to touch upon this on item number 939. What we've incurred is the front ends on the Dodge vehicles that we have. It can go without saying that the roads on Groseal are notoriously terrible. And what we're doing is that the front ends on the Dodge vehicles that we have, they're not able to sustain the hard roads that they're encountering. We are transitioning over to SUVs. We're going to give them a trial period and see if we can reduce our maintenance costs. It's my hope that the SUVs are going to be more comfortable for the officers. They're not as the Dodges are very small and confining, and the field of view is very narrow in those vehicles. So we do consider it somewhat of a safety risk. The new vehicles that are the SUVs, and then we also have 2 pickup trucks that are coming online. One was, it was a grant that was through Department of Homeland Security through what we call the Stone Garden Grant. Lieutenant Pellin was instrumental in obtaining that vehicle, and that vehicle is going to be placed into service also. So we will have 3 new sport utility vehicles and then 2 pickup trucks. So going around the block to get next door, it was my point to elicit that the new vehicles are going to reduce our maintenance costs. We've pushed the envelope on one of our SUVs to over 100,000 miles. Right now, I believe it just clocked over 104 to 106,000. So we've tried to really overextend the vehicles to get as much use out of them as we can. I'll have you reflect on page 26. And just on the only one that's really important, everything else is pretty much well status quo, is the education and training. I, for one, am a staunch supporter of education and training. Last year, I asked for an increase in the budget on training for the reason that it's lower this year is that we found with COVID that a lot of the training that we used to send people to, we can do remotely from a computer system and with the remote conference calling that we have now. So a lot of the programs and training, instead of people going to Ohio or, a lot of the local colleges that we would send people to, we can now do it remotely at the police department. So the in-house training, we're getting just as much training, but at a reduced cost because we're utilizing Zoom and all of the new things that we've learned over the last 12, 15 months. The last line item is 978, equipment for vehicles. This is one of the most expensive ones in reference to the vehicles. Just be aware that we can't really change a Dodge vehicle, like a Dodge sedan. Their cages there are not configured for a sport utility for a Ford Explorer. So we have to buy different types of vehicle parts that cost a certain amount of money. So the equipment for vehicles does have a little bit higher cost just because some things don't carry over. And since we're going from one manufacturer to another, the upfront cost is going to be a little bit more, but on the downside, it'll be able to transfer over as we get additional vehicles online. I'll have you turn to page 27. And this will show our vehicle cost. Our Dodge products are about $32,000. We're around $34,000 to $35,000 for the sport utilities that we've just recently purchased. We had a pass-through on the budget for this year. Is what had happened is we purchased a vehicle, but then we added the new vehicle that the lieutenant got as a grant. We had to pay for that up front, but we're being reimbursed as a pass-through from Homeland Security on that. So we're just, we anticipate the check shortly. The next item is 986 for equipment purchases. This is all our generalized equipment that we purchase throughout the year just to keep our department functioning. We're at 13,444 right now. We believe that we can maintain and be under that, so we're going to keep it close at about 13,000. On the computer equipment purchases, the line item is 986.5. Like I had explained earlier, we're not going to be making outright computer purchases. There's only one that we require, which is in our evidence room. It compiles all of our database for all the guns, for any of the drugs, any of the surrendered firearms. Whenever it goes into our evidence locker, we have a whole system that has a dedicated computer system to that inventory. So that is the only anticipated tower that we anticipate exchanging or updating, and that would be the only cost expense for computers for the next fiscal year. Have you turn to page 28, please. This is the animal control expenditures. She's very low on most of these expenditures. We're in line that there hasn't been any cost overruns. What I am doing is I'm aware that the animal shelter has had a reduction in animals from cats to dogs. I just want you to be aware that whenever COVID hit, everybody was interested in cats and dogs because they wanted to have animals in their home to alleviate some of the stressors that were going on with COVID. So there was a complete increase in the amount of animals that people were taking in from shelters, and people that were wanting animals for companionship. So with that, this fiscal year, we've had a reduction in the amount of intake on animals at the shelter. So I have Julie doing a 5-year analysis that's going to indicate the amount of animals over the year that, in comparison to years of the intake and the outtake. Just be aware that Julie is one that we call this a no-kill shelter, and she's always trying to get them out as quickly as she gets them in. So the catch-22 that she gets is that if she does her job too well and she gets an animal in and adopts it out, well, it looks like our animal shelter isn't busy enough, but she's doing her job. In donations, are you able to help me in on the amount of total donations?
Her total donations are almost $70,000 right now.
Yes.
So
For the year.
in total, her pot of money. Yep.
For the escrow account is.
Yep.
So Julie is doing an excellent job on donations. She keeps the revenue coming in. Most of that money is used for if we have an animal that needs some type of veterinarian expenses and stuff like that. Those would be costs that could be in the thousands of dollars. So we utilize that money for that account. And that would be outside of what's budgeted here. I'll have you go to page 29. And this is our reserve police. The reserve police, because of COVID, they were put in kind of standby mode. We didn't want to overextend and overexpose a lot of our officers whenever COVID hit. So as a safety measure, we had them stand down for an extended period of time. They are back in service. What we have done is that They're, I believe, they have 8 right now. Their objective would be to have 10 reserves online. One is in line to go to the academy shortly. He was supposed to go this year, or let me say last year. He wasn't able to do that because of COVID. They shut the training down. So we have him in line to be able to go to the next training program. And so we've been proactive. He is on the reserves, but he's not certified, let's just say. So we are taking measures to get him outfitted and get these things paid for out of this year's budget that will reduce some of the costs that we'll have for the next fiscal year. So we should be in a good place with that. I'll be happy to entertain any questions if anybody has any at this point. Chief Porcerelli?
For you, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, Joe.
Oh, okay, thank you. You know, and Brent, I apologize ahead of time if I missed this. When you were talking about the gun range, I don't see a rental for it. Are they giving it to you for free now, or is it just not in there?
Yeah, they're not charging us right now. They haven't charged us in 2 years.
Well, that's a great deal then. I thought it was your uncle that was the city manager now in Trenton. That's a good deal.
We're cautious. I mean, it's in there because we want to be able to give it to them if they ask, but they have not asked for it. There's been a reciprocity between departments, so it's just.
I hope they don't ask.
We're being cautious.
One question for you, sir. Did I understand that you're going to be going to the SUV style vehicles, all of them, or are you going to keep some of the regular road vehicles? I'm sorry, when I say road vehicles, I meant the sedans.
Right. Some of the officers have indicated that they want sedans. Right now, we've just went with the SUVs just to get a kind of some feedback from the officers, and we will continue to have the sedans that we have in service right now. Once we get some feedback, we'll be able to make some determinations on going back to not going back, but having a mixed fleet, I guess I would say. The other issue is that we have a pickup truck that, the one that Lieutenant Pellin just brought online has a longer wheelbase compared to the first pickup truck that we purchased about 18 months ago. So we're going to put the smaller wheelbase pickup truck in service. It's at the vendor right now to get marked up. So that's going to be I think that's got less than 20,000 miles on it. So I still consider that a fairly new vehicle. So we're going to have a mixed fleet. Right now, Chief, we're talking about 2 pickup trucks, 3 sport utility vehicles that would be new, that are Ford Explorers for all practical purposes. Ford calls them pursuit vehicles. And then we'll still have some of the Dodges online, which are around 60 to 70,000 miles right now per vehicle.
Okay, I understand where you're going with that. I just, through experience, obviously, when I got the SUVs for the winter only, just so you know, and if you'd like to talk about it later, there are some research out there of the SUVs and some of the liability that they have as opposed to the sedan having a lower center of gravity. But what's good about Grosse Ile is we only have a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit. And I know that our officers and still are trained in, and when I use the word pursuit driving, when people are out there listening, we're not talking about chases. Pursuit driving just means if you have to go over the speed limit. And I know they're trained very well, and we have very few accidents when I was there, and I know we have them, if any now. So they've done a great job, and you've done a great job. There's just there is some research out there. If you'd like to talk, I mean, we can talk, but I understand where you're going with that. So thank you again for your time.
I appreciate that. Thank you. No, and I will reach out to you and we can discuss that. Thank you.
Any other questions for?
Yeah, I have a question. And it's probably more of a Ann question than a Brent question, but Brent, if you go to page 1 and you kind of add up, and again, I don't have the history you guys have, so help me with this if I get this wrong, but if you add up the 657, 59 first line, which is police, and then go down to the next police line, which is the 487, 625.
Yep.
Then the 648, 393, which is police.
Yep, page 6.
Yep. And then you go down to the general fund, which is a 1245, 146.
Yep, look on page 6.
Okay. Now, I'm kind of adding all these
Right.
up.
Yep, page 6 is a summary of all the
Oh,
ones in
okay.
general fund.
You don't have to add.
Oh, I don't have to add it. Page 6, I don't see that. Okay. Well, having just added it up, I come to total available funds, if all that was allocated to the police, of 3,849,231. Is that?
Dang, you're right on, mister.
Okay.
Yeah, 3849, if everything was, yeah.
And
231.
so, then if you go to our total budget, which is like that 3.7 plus the,
Yep.
you know, animal shelter, and what's the
Yep.
other one?
Reserve.
Yep.
Reserve.
Yep,
You get 3,725,107.
correct.
Pretty close.
Yep.
Okay. And so if you compare that budget to last year, we're up 6.25%. Right? And if you compare, if we were to increase again 6.25% next year, or 22, 23, then we are like almost out of money. Where then that you could be allocating before you get into red, you're like 30K away. So that's the 3,725,107 times 106.25%. That gets you within 30K of the total available of 3,849,231. So I guess it begs the question, you know, what's our plan? Because there's a high likelihood we're going to have a problem, and the first millage, you know, we're just not going. We have to renew that to 650, 759. I'm thinking, right? But even still, you know, it looks like we're going to have to go for some type of increase. Else, that's assuming we increase at the same rate as what we did.
Sure. This one went up,
Yeah.
the total went up 1.56%. I don't know where you're getting the 6% for the,
3,725.
from 3,654 was 1.56% is what the
I had
police budget went up.
3.5. Did I add that wrong?
I
3.5.
think so. And so our tax.
05883.
Right,
Was
so
that
basically,
budget versus actual?
that was last year's actual.
Okay. All right, so we got a little bit more room, but still we're getting really close to getting in trouble. Is the bottom line. So I guess just from a budgeting perspective, because we're talking about budgets, we don't have a multi-year plan.
We do.
Yeah, we
do.
only talk about the year coming up at that's what we're doing. Yeah, what you're talking about is looking, and we do have to do that. And it'd be a combination. It's not, it can't be an open checkbook. We just got to go out and get more money. We also have to look at our expenses, and take a look at that and see if there's anything that can be cut. It's got to be a combination. In order to be fair to the people of Grow Zeal, it's got to be a combination. It can't just be more money, more money, more money.
Right.
So, but yes, you're right. That has to be looked at, but it's not part of what we're doing now.
Right. I do have a 5-year plan that goes through that, and we can get to that later, so. It's just not doing
Right.
it
The
right
general
this minute.
fund 5-year plan, right?
Yes, I do,
But
yes.
that doesn't include the millages, right?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Dedicated millages?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good.
Mr. Jarecki, I will add that we do utilize some forfeiture funds which come in, and actually this month we just received $240,000
Right.
for the month of February. So a lot of the
Included on here anywhere?
no,
Okay.
a lot of the incurred costs that we would normally take out of a line item budget, we can supplement through the forfeiture funds.
Okay.
So we are in a good place with that right now.
And Brent, do you know what you're owed in forfeiture funds? What might be coming down the line if
Sure.
the governments ever pay state
Yeah.
and fed?
What happened over the last, during COVID, well, prior to COVID, the year before COVID, we were getting checks from April until November. Then those checks stopped through COVID of last year. I got a hold of our task force officer. He ended up getting me in touch with the regional director in Detroit, and then I ended up getting a hold of individuals in Washington because the checks had stopped. And I was very concerned about that. We put the canine officer on with the anticipation of getting him pre-trained whenever Officer Ferguson departs and goes into retirement. So we were being proactive on that. We explained to the feds that we put out a significant amount of money to get this individual trained as a dog guy to be able to have him replace the current officer that's at the airport. They went into action pretty quickly, surprisingly, and released a significant amount of money. I anticipated about $1 million, $750 to $1 million. Right now, we just got $240,000, and I anticipate probably another $7 to $1 million right now.
And in saying that, that is there, that certainly helps the police department out, but we don't want to figure that in
Correct.
any way, shape, or form, because it's not guaranteed.
Yes, and as an attachment to that, you know, we budget for one car a year, and we do use forfeiture funds for purchasing of vehicles, but one thing that the feds do cautious of is that we can't do what we call supplant. So for the things that we normally would have to pay for in an annual budget, we need to pay for. We just can't use the forfeiture funds willy-nilly just to pay for things that we normally should incur the cost from.
And those forfeiture funds cannot be used for salaries and benefits. Is that correct?
We use it for one, that's to pay for the backfill of the officer that's on the task force that's left.
But you
That would be
couldn't do it across the board.
Correct. Normally, we consider that about $120,000, and that's the money that we take out of that fund in order to pay for the officer that's assigned to that detail. So.
All right. Thanks, Brent.
Thank you.
Appreciate
your
it.
time. Thank you.
Thanks for your answers, Brent.
Thank you, Chief.
Mr. Fire.
Rusty.
How do I raise this up?
Page 30, page 35.
Thank you.
Oh. If I may, I'd like to give a brief description of the fire department for those watching. When the citizens of Groseal call the Groseal Fire Department for help, whether it be for a choking infant, an unresponsive person, or something as simple as a tree in the roadway, we show up within minutes with highly trained personnel and cutting-edge equipment. These highly trained personnel are volunteers. They are members of your community, whether they be your next-door neighbor or somebody you cross paths with at Kroger's. Only on Groseal can you call 911 and have a volunteer fighter helping you within seconds. The Groseal Fire Department does all this on a volunteer basis, providing the best service for a cost by a long shot. My volunteers respond to calls 24/7, around the clock, including holidays. It is important to remember that we are in the business of saving lives, and we have the utmost respect for our community. Currently, I have 19 active firemen. I have 4 brand new members who are just starting training. Unfortunately, I just lost one. He quit because of the time constraints. At this time, we have 5 members on leave. 3 of those members have COVID. 1 is out on a medical, and 1's out with a stress-related medical problem. 3 of my members have over 30 years. 1 has 41 years, 1 has 36, and 1 has 34. 3 of my members have 20-plus years of service. The rest of my members have under 5 years of service. I have 15 retired firefighters and family members. Any questions?
No, the promo is going good.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Yes, we need volunteers. We want to keep this fire department going for the lifetime of the township. We're starting on page 35, which is a summary of our revenue and expenditures. This year we'll be operating at $1,332,299. That will be less $202,454 from last year's budget. That's what we're aiming for. Does anyone have any questions on this page?
Yeah, Russ?
Yes, sir.
The drop of the 130,000 in your ambulance revenue, is that COVID, there were less runs? Or,
You just answered your own question.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
During the COVID, the original scare in March, people weren't going to the hospital unless they were deathly ill.
okay,
We still had runs. We still had plenty of things. We had a plane crash. We had the boat rescue, the boat crash, a house fire. And then when we did get a run, it was usually priority one, immediate life or death.
okay. Thanks, Russ.
Thank you. I'm going to jump ahead to page 37, which talks about our ambulance service fees. We are estimating slightly less than last year. What those service fees are derived from, when we have a rescue, we get a standard fee that we charge the insurance company. Originally, we used to not charge that fee, but we realized we're not saving the citizens' money, we're saving the insurance company money. They pay a flat rate of roughly $500 per call. That money goes into this ambulance fund, and we use that towards our budget. May I answer any questions on that? No. Okay, let's move to page 38. Some of our costs that we're cutting, if you look at our full-time salaries, we're taking a cut of $14,000. Our largest expense, as you can see, is our health insurance. That is my largest expense of all. The health insurance is what keeps my members A lot of what we do is mandated by the state. Wait, it turns, there we go.
Okay.
That insurance keeps my members coming back. You saw that I have members with well over 34 years, 36 years. They're still serving. It's because of the insurance. That's what we give them for their dedication and their support. Every year the insurance rates go up. This year, because we have less personnel, they have actually gone down by $30,000. This is the first time in a long time. Any questions on page 38?
Chief, regarding regarding the retiree medical insurance, that is medical insurance for the full-time employees that retired or for the volunteers that retired who were previously receiving insurance as volunteers?
That's correct. That's for those 15 members
Okay.
that have put in 30 or more years.
Roger that.
Explain to them that stops, right?
That does stop. Anybody hired after 2014, because we were concerned with legacy costs. Anyone hired after that date does not get that 30-year, and there's only a handful of us left.
That's a self-correcting budgetary issue there then.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, thanks, Chief.
Page 39, again, more expenses. Most of them are just the cost of doing business for a fire department. There's nothing in here that's out of the ordinary.
Is there anything planned? I see the, maintenance on building went up. Is there anything specific for that, or is it just a general thought that there's going to be more?
We had some heavy snowfalls this year. The grass cutting, the maintenance of the building, maintenance costs just keep going up
So
every
it's
year.
just the thought of them going up, nothing specific.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The good news is we paid the building off last year, so that was a good saving for us. Any others? Our ambulance budget is on page 40. And this, again, talks about some of the costs, medical supplies. I will tell you, with COVID, medical supplies went through the roof. Nobody knew what we had coming. Nobody knew what was going on. The state was mandating that we had to get all kinds of different supplies, new supplies. It changed the way we did business. No longer can we just run into a house without knowing. Now we go through screening with the dispatchers to find out if there's COVID first. We have to protect my men as well as our patients. And there's more involved here than just the firemen. They have families, they have children. Our responsibilities extend to all of them. Any questions on page 40? Page 41 is our equipment. Our equipment fund is what we use to buy the fire trucks, the equipment, things like that. Fire trucks are notoriously expensive. Our house fire that we had this year, we were able to put 2 full pumpers, a ladder truck, our whole complement of equipment on that house fire. That was a large fire, and it spread to the house next door. With our equipment, and our equipment alone, we were able to extinguish that fire in both houses. When we were called, it was fully involved. It was quite the scenario.
That was the old depot area?
Yes, sir. So we did call mutual aid. We did have some help from Trenton and Woodhaven, but it was manpower. The more men you have, the safer the scene. My goal in my job is to make sure that everybody goes home, and we don't want to risk anyone's safety.
You're not. Is there any plan for having to purchase any equipment this year? I'm thinking not.
I'm thinking not. My fire marshal's vehicle has over 100,000 miles on it. It does have 2 large holes in the back, but we're pushing that thing as long as we can push it. If I can put it off till next year, we will.
But none of the trucks have to be replaced this year.
The trucks are in good.
Yeah.
They're expensive to repair. Unfortunately, they're expensive to buy, and a fire truck's no good if it's not working. So when I got to make repairs,
you got to spend the money.
Yeah, there's nothing I can do about it, but it's a fact of life. That's it, gentlemen. Is
Any questions for Russ?
any questions I may answer for you?
No, thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief.
You can hear her in the background.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay, just Mike.
Good evening, board and public. Mike Duker with the Airfield Commerce Park budget. We are starting on page 62. I'm going to hit a couple of the key parts of the budget, and then I'll kind of go through page by page and point out a few things. Stop me along the way, any questions. We break the Airport Commerce Park up into 3 revenue and cost center expense centers. Those are our airfield, our commerce park, and our fuel farm. We currently have, for staff, we have 2 full-time, myself and 1 full-time maintenance employee. We have 2 part-time that operate our FBO, which is a fixed-based operator that handles a lot of our tenant needs in terms of fueling, aircraft care, and transient traffic. So those are 2 part-time employees without healthcare expense or anything like that. We have 2 retired that we're still carrying with us, and then we also have 1 to 2 seasonal that we operate for about 3 to 4 months in the summer. On it's a 40-hour week basis, but they're considered a seasonal employee there. So same no legacy costs with that, and that's basically for maintaining landscaping, lawn mowing. We have I think it's 240 mobile acres here, so we have a lot of grass to keep up with, and that's pretty much full-time jobs in the summer. On page 62 is where we're starting. You're going to see the gross revenues and expenditures. You will see a balanced budget. This budget does not go into retained earnings. If you recall, I gave you guys a presentation at our Monday meeting kind of highlighting some of the revenues, but I'll go through those and kind of show you where we're seeing some of the benefits of our new developments. You'll see, looking at the snapshot on page 62, there's some movements going on with the revenues. The airfield is showing down significantly, and the reason that is last fiscal, if you're looking year over year, last fiscal year we pulled $140,000 forward from retained earnings, and that was for our Building 63 project, the development that we did. We split that between Airport and Commerce Park. That's just an accounting. I mean, it really came from retained earnings, and we just applied it to those 2. So you're seeing a gross loss of airfield revenue. In reality, we're just not pulling that dollar amount forward. The Commerce Park revenues are up significantly, so not only does that includes the $70,000 we're not pulling forward, but it's increased $81,000. That's where we're seeing our new tenant and building the previous tennis center facility, the incomes from Building 63, the subdivide we did, as well as our new land lease. So we'll break that down there. Again, as I mentioned in the Monday meeting, this is the highest gross revenue we've had since 06-07, or organic revenue, what I'll consider. And when I say organic, I mean that we don't dip into retained earnings. Going to page 63, I'm going to be pretty brief. The fuel farm revenues and expenditures, we apply the FBO salaries to. We did make that move, I think, Anna, was it 3 years ago? Yeah. We used to apply all salaries kind of almost evenly divided across all 3 accounts. We switched that. Most of the maintenance and my salary is allocated to Airport and Commerce Park, and then the FBO employees are mostly on the fuel farm because that's where a lot of their time is spent. I do have some time allocated to the fuel farm just from an administrative standpoint, handling the sales, downloading, ordering fuel, but it's a very minimal part of my daily job. So the fuel farm really is a cash in, cash out account. If prices go up on fuel, our revenues will show higher, but so will our expenses. If prices are down like they've been the last year, the revenues look down. The gallons are actually up, but the revenues are down because the fuel prices came down significantly.
Can I ask you a question on that?
Absolutely.
So do you hold a percent margin? Do you hold a percent margin?
Correct. So where
if prices go up, you actually make more gross. That if it is a percent.
I'm sorry, we do not. So we charge a fixed rate flowage fee per gallon.
Okay.
So it's
so it's
for
fixed.
avgas, it's 18 cents a gallon. For jet fuel, it's a little higher. It's around 20.
So it doesn't matter. You're
right.
No matter what.
We're making it on the flow.
Same amount.
The taxes get collected. Sales tax, we actually have to prepay now. The state changed that requirement a little while ago. We have to prepay the sales tax for all the gallons that we buy, and then we collect it on the back end. Again, cash in, cash out account. We pay a series of, I think it's 7 other taxes to the state. There's a spill tax and excise tax. Those things get broken down and built into the cost. It's really not a large revenue generator for the airport. It's more of a service that we almost have to provide. It's been a tough year with that. Fuel prices are significantly down, but with the bridge being down, a fully loaded fuel tanker will bring 8,500 gallons over. That's what you're seeing at your gas stations. That's what we bring to the airport. I've been capped at 3,500 gallons across the pay bridge, and we have to pay the fee to bring it over. So our fixed costs are the same. We're getting less gallons for our money. We're struggling to keep the competitive rate. So that's kind of one of the things that we're hoping will change as the bridge issues wind down. But that's the revenue. Yeah, again, we just I think I've budgeted $164,000 for the last 3 or 4 years just as a kind of a placeholder. But again, it's cash in, cash out. We have a fixed gallon price that we get for flow.
And the price you charge is a competitive rate.
Correct. Yeah, we try to be as competitive as we can. We look at our 3 or 4 areas, but we have found our flowage fee and the taxes built in and the margin are competitive no matter what. I mean, and it seems like all the airports, they don't play a percentage. Monroe Airport, for example, fuel prices skyrocket and they go up 30 cents a gallon. I'm still sitting on the previous load. They get a fresh load, the price is going to be down. I don't think most of our users are probably not going to fly to another airport to fill that up. We'll sell what we have, and then our prices will come down too. So it's kind of a bit of a cat and mouse game, but we just have to wait for that inventory to deplete. Going on to page 64, this is our Airfield Revenue side. We break, I'll touch on a couple of things. We break our revenue down in terms of different leases. We have land and building leases. So you'll see those broken out. And then in terms of our lease structures, we have a few different types. We do like a gross modified lease. That's where we're getting a revenue from a tenant. They're paying some of the utility costs. We're responsible for the bulk of the maintenance. Structure of the building, also light bulbs, things like that. We will do a triple net lease, which generally has the tenant responsible for taxes, large or small capital improvements, and we're pretty much roof, windows, walls, utilities serving the structure. That's a much more removed lease. And then we also do long-term land leases. So if you look at our portfolio, there's kind of a, I think in the budget meeting there, the question was asked of all the different rates. We have different square footages. We have different types of facilities. So the rates are kind of varied, and each lease is case by case, and the rates are different. Now we have some that are standardized, obviously, but you're going to kind of see that there. So only thing to point out on page 64, again, you're going to see land, building, hangars, or T-hangars. We have 65 of them on the field. They've been full the last 2 years. That's a great problem to have. The first 4 or 5 years I was here, we had 10, 12 vacant. But that 600 account, again, that's where you're going to see the retained earnings not being pulled forward from last year. So you can see that last year we did 70,000, 826. That's not coming in. The last line item, the 694 000, the miscellaneous income. We budget $8,000 for that. That's our photo shoots, our weddings that we host in the hangar, anything like that. It really varies. 2 years ago, I had it up to $32,000. A couple years before that, it's in the 20s. This year, it's significantly reduced. We're still over 8,000, but we just kind of put 8,000 in there as a placeholder.
We just had a photo shoot, didn't we?
Correct. Yep.
The new
Our standard, if we do a photo shoot in the hangar and they want half the hangar and some ramp space outside, is about $2,500 a day. So that's where you're going to see that 8,000 is kind of a very conservative estimate, but something like COVID, we've only had at the beginning of COVID, we had no photo shoots. It's actually been picking up the last few weeks. I think we've done 3 in about a month and a half. So the demand's kind of starting to come back from that, and we're seeing some revenue. And really for us, it's very easy revenue. We open a door, we move a few planes, we get an insurance policy, and that covers it. So we're always looking for other opportunities like that. Going on to page 65. Again, broken down into rent income for land and building. The second line item there, 6680, that's where you're going to see that new land lease with Pirates Cove that I talked about on Monday. So you can kind of see those are all of our land leases in bulk in that 668 account. That's where you're seeing that $74,000 jump over previous years. That's that new contract that's guaranteed for 30 years and has a 20-year option on it. So that's a great addition to our bottom line. It's a pretty secure revenue stream in the long term. The only other thing to point out on there, the 66830, that's our building income in the Commerce Park. So you're seeing all of our tenants broken down there. The very last one on Building 63, Trident Studios, that is new. The two additions in that account are the Trident Studios. That's units 9 and 10 that we added last minute onto Building 63. So you're seeing that revenue come in there, and then it's also Island Athletics' first year revenue in there at $50,000. So that's why you're seeing that jump from last year of $77,600. That's where the bulk of that increase in Commerce Park revenue is coming from. And again, last number there, 6990. We're not pulling any prior year resources forward like we did last year for that development. Any questions there? Can move on to the expense side.
Excuse me, Mike.
Sure.
Go ahead, Jim. I'm sorry.
I just want quickly, do you expect a new tenant this year?
We do have, I'll point out one thing we get into the expense side. We have another potential right now for the east side of Hangar 1. I'm not prepared to go into details because we're still negotiating the lease side of it. I do believe it's going to move forward, and it will be another development with long-term revenue, but we're still kind of crossing I's and dotting T's, and the potential tenant is currently working on financing. So I would say we're in the final stages of that, but I'm not comfortable showing on the revenue side yet.
Oh, no, you wouldn't. Yep. No, absolutely not. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. So the tennis center is 100% to the lessees for that tennis center, or whatever we want to call it. It's more pickleball now than tennis center, right? And
sure.
Everything else.
What do you mean by your question, 100%?
They have the whole building.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. They do. They have a provision in their lease. They can do a sublease. It cannot be a majority of the building. It needs to be kind of confirmed by the Airport Commerce Park Commission. Mm-hmm. But if they want to seek other revenue streams on their end, in general, the commission in the past has allowed that. The one thing we look for is to make sure that the tenant isn't charging. If we're charging $4 a square foot and they're getting 12, there's a conversation we'll probably have. Now, if it's a comparable market rate and it helps them offset some of their bottom line, we normally don't have a problem with it. But that is 100% their facility under the lease right now.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, and as I mentioned Monday, I think that's a 3-year tiered lease. It increases about $10,000 a year on the revenue side. So that was to incentivize them and then help us kind of gradually do some more of the capital improvements that are needed in the facility. No other questions? We'll go on to page 66. Getting into expenses. This is really just broken down. Regular salaries or health insurance. I reviewed the employees that we currently have on there. So you'll see that broken down for full-time, part-time, regular, some overtime. We run into overtime sometimes in the summertime if we're trying to keep up with mowing or obviously plowing our runways at 2 a.m. or whatever time of night it snows. Everything else on there, I really get most of the numbers from the accounting department. I look at the last 5-year historicals and we budget off of that. Our gas and oil, our professional services, our utility costs are generally very close, and the budget doesn't need to be changed. We're talking several % change a year. So every 5 or 10 years we might make a small adjustment on some of those, but everything for the most part remains unchanged. On that page, you'll see a small reduction in retiree medical, but everything else is unchanged. So we can go on to page 67. On page 67, this is getting into more of the airfield expenses. We do pay an admin fee to the township. That's for assistance in utilizing the finance department. We also do contribute an additional 10% for billing help with one of the employees. And then you see our insurance and bonds. Nothing else on that page that really sticks out. Everything else is pretty standard there. You'll see our bad debt expense. Our admin expenses and our bad debt expense increase with revenue, so that's why you're going to see some exchange in those, or some increase in those, rather. Going on to page 68. This is where we're going to get into some of our capital improvement projects that we have planned for the upcoming year. On the airport side, we have a design with our engineers, CNS. We utilize a different engineering company for the airport than the township does in general, and then we utilize CE Rains for everything else in our Commerce Park or our buildings. So we have $16,750. That is our match of the grant to pay CNS engineers to design our taxiway Alpha, and we're reconstructing the eastern portion of that taxiway from our new runway that we did a few years ago to our center taxiway. So that's the design services for that. We're hoping to do that construction the following fiscal year. I do need to see, once the design services are done, where those bids are going to come in the future. If the bridge is still down, I think that could be a cost prohibitive. If it's not, then we may move forward with that construction project. The Hangar 2 approach reconstruction. This is our main entrance to the airport. The geometry is very odd to that apron, as well as deteriorated to a point where it needs to be redone. So the airport actually did receive, we've been getting some of the COVID relief funding that was designated for airports. The first round of funding, we received a $30,000 grant. That's to go back towards salaries, expenses, debt services, things like that. But obviously it's helped offset some of our costs. So that was one we wanted to take on for the airport, but we don't need to go into our retained earnings for that. I'll bring it up while we're here. I just got confirmation yesterday that we did qualify for $13,000 from the second round of stimulus that was done in, I think it was December 14th. So I have filed the proper paperwork to claim that, and we will see. It appears that there could be potential for more stimulus if the president signs this next round in. So those are a couple of capital improvement projects there. One note on this page, under that 975-100, other capital improvements. I have not done this before in a budget, but we are going to show it this way for now. And the reason other capital improvements, basically this is, I wouldn't call it a surplus in the budget, but this is additional funds that are available from our revenues that we're generating. Now, as I mentioned, we have a couple potentials on the table, some other developments. We also have a couple of other projects coming forward in the future, such as that taxiway that needs to be redone, where we needed to have a $100,000 grant match for that coming up. So I've allocated other capital improvements to kind of be flexible. Traditionally, I don't do that. You'll see it broken down line item by line item. In this case and year, with the potentials we have, I'm just going to show it as that. It'll come to the board if we need to allocate those funds to something. You'll see a breakdown from that. But you're going to see that $44,000 on the airfield side and on the Commerce Park side. So basically we had a surplus somewhere around $80,000. We're going to either put that back into our retained earnings for future capital improvements, such as a taxiway project, start saving for a roof on our tennis center facility that's going to need to get done in the next 2 to 5 years. That's a large expense. So we're either going to roll it forward or we're going to take it for another opportunity if it arises for revenues this year. So again, traditionally I don't do that, but this year the commission and I decided to do that just to kind of keep it flexible. On both the airfield side and the Commerce Park side, you're going to see a principal payment for, we term it a mortgage, but and an interest expense. On the airport side, that's for the runway loan that we took out for the grant match for the reconstruction. And then on the Commerce Park side, you're going to see that for our Building 63 development. The maturity on those dates for the runway one is 2029. For Building 63, it's 2039. And it's a pretty traditional balance where the principal payment goes up and the interest comes down. They kind of balance each other out. Going on to page 69, fuel farm expense. Again, pretty much unchanged, kind of cash in, cash out. We have a phone service out there that downloads the credit card sales. We have the expense for the actual fuel purchases. The maintenance buildings reduced slightly because we did a capital improvement project to the secondary retention wall that was required by the state last year. I think everything else is unchanged. We'll go on to page 70. We got 2 more pages left here. Again, same thing. This is the other half of the airport, equivalent of the airport expense that you saw. So we break it down into the salaries, retirement, dental, mostly unchanged. Going on to page 71. This is where you're going to see the capital improvements for the Commerce Park side of things. Again, our electricity, natural gas, water, those are all, we're looking at historical trends, and they don't need to be changed with what we're seeing. The 9310, this is our capital improvement. General maintenance, that's just things we do on our buildings. A furnace goes out, anything like that. We do have budgeted to repave the tennis center parking lot. Unfortunately, it's not eligible to be milled and capped. The condition of the parking lot needs a full reconstruction, so that's why you're seeing a bit of a higher cost there. We did put a little extra, a few $1,000s extra in there in case there's some increased costs with bridge being down and things like that. And that's where you're going to see the other half of the capital improvement costs there at $44,000. And then the last 2, again, is principal payment. That's on the Building 63 loan that the township approved. So that concludes my report. Let me know if you guys have any final questions.
Sounded a lot like what I heard before.
Pretty thorough.
Hopefully that's good.
It is. That
Thank you,
means
Mike.
no questions.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
On 72.
Last but not least, I'll try to make this quick for you. If you do have any questions, feel free to interrupt me, and I'll try to do my best to answer them. Our department is a large department. We're responsible for, within our budget, a number of different smaller entities that all combine to include in total DPS. Community development, drainage, roads, water, sewer, the wastewater treatment plant, and refuse are all budgets that you should have received within your packet, and I'll go over some of the major items in each one of these different areas, changes that we have from previous years compared to this year. Where I'd like to start is with page 73, and we'll start talking about water. Water revenue, we are projecting some decreased sales for the upcoming year. Last year we were right around 259 million gallons. We've budgeted for the next fiscal year 255 million gallons, which is a slight reduction in the total amount of sales that we anticipate. It's been a policy of the township to take into account charges that GLWA assess of us on the gallonage that we buy from them. So for those that don't know, Groseal Township does not make its own water, much like many of the Southeast Michigan communities, if not all the Southeast Michigan communities. We buy water from GLWA, which is the old Detroit Water Service or water system. So we're a customer of them. They take a look at their budget annually and they adjust their charges based upon their budget needs, and then they pass those charges on to their consumer, which is us in this case, and then we pass on those charges to our consumer, which is the Groseal resident. So what you've seen in the budget is a proposal for a slight rate increase in order to account for the increase that GLWA has passed to us. So what's being proposed is on our commodity charge, which is the gallon rate that we charge our residents, an adjustment from $11.50 a unit to $11.68 a unit. And that generates about $27,000 in additional revenue to cover the cost that GLWA has assessed us or is planning on assessing us for the upcoming year. The balance of the revenue...
Excuse me, what is a unit?
1,000 gallons.
Okay,
yep. The rest of the revenue generated by the water department comes from these various other line items that you have here. Service charges, tapping fees, sales of parts like meters, penalties, and then miscellaneous income. We do have anticipated $122,500 of fund balance coming in on the revenue side for next fiscal year. The intent is to receive, or the hope is to receive a grant which would cover the cost of that overage. And you'll see as we start going through expenditures that overage is generated from an asset management plan that the state is mandating that we generate for our water system. The state has made some funds available for asset management plan development. We've made an application for that, and our hope is that we will receive those funds. My understanding is the answer on that grant will come in by the end of April, so we should have a little bit of a figure of where we're going to be and whether or not that fund balance is going to be necessary to draw on or not. So are there any questions with regards to the revenue end of water?
Derek, I just have one. I'm sorry to interrupt you real quick.
Sure.
On the rate increase, that's not the rate increase that happened a few months back. This is for 21, 22?
Correct. It's for the upcoming fiscal year. Yep. So GLWA generally assesses.
When will that be brought?
What
months do you think that's brought to the board?
GLWA usually assesses our increase in July. So you would end up seeing it in front of the township board in the May, June timeframe, something like that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry to interrupt.
You're right. Anytime. Any of you guys feel free to ask a question.
And that is the normal time that we see that.
Correct.
So in July is when it hits.
Yes. And actually, just as a side note, GLWA actually delayed some of their increases or their increase that they were planning on levying on their customers this past fiscal year. Their increase that was slated for July actually didn't go into effect until December or January. So there was some relief to us within our budget in that GLWA's cost to us actually decreased just because they didn't impose an increase until later on within the fiscal year.
Does GLWA ever decrease their rates, historically speaking? Or is it just always
no,
increase?
I haven't seen them decrease their rates. The only
I'm just curious. I know it's
a very
kind of a crazy question.
It's a very legitimate question. So when you started getting into the minutia of how rates are calculated, there's a lot that goes into it. So GLWA takes a look at a community's profile. How much water do you purchase from them? How far you are from their plants? When is your peak consumption? So you'll see like a community that has a water tower. That's really, if they're a customer of GLWA, that's a cost-saving measure. So if the majority of Groseal's consumption is from 7 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock in the afternoon till 8 o'clock in the afternoon, the rates will be greater for us than if you had a water tower. You filled up your water tower at 2 a.m., drew down on that water tower, and weren't impacting them with their peak consumption timeframes. So the rate structure that GLWA imposes can be different based upon your community and your water usage. The other thing is Groseal Township recently entered into a new agreement with GLWA. GLWA had a model agreement that they wanted all their communities that enter into, all their customers, to ensure that their customer contracts mirrored each other, but also were through a long period of time, like a 30-year duration. They did offer some savings when you entered into a new contract. They weren't that great, but most communities, what we did is we incorporated those savings into capital improvements because we're all behind the curve as it relates to infrastructure improvements. So it's a very good question, but there's a lot that plays into how rates are established, what we're charged, what we charge the consumer, and hopefully that answered what you're looking for.
And
I think it does.
Yeah, I'd just add to that, yeah, a big part of it is the rate consumption, gallons consumed, and ours has been going down.
Right.
And they have certain fixed costs that and they changed it. I don't know how was it 3 years ago? Right. Well, right before I think Detroit became Great Lakes Water. They split. Instead of everything being off of usage, they have a fixed cost that we have to pay. If we don't use a gallon of water, we still have a fixed charge.
Yeah, to the supervisor's point, there are two charges that GLWA assesses as a fixed monthly charge and then a commodity charge. And GLWA, regardless of what community you're in, they've been adjusting the way that they charge more heavily towards getting the majority of the revenue on that monthly income. I mean, as you can imagine, you would prefer to have fixed income, fixed dependable amounts rather than having a variable rate that's based upon the commodity usage. So that's what they're transitioning to. Now, GLWA recently has, within the past 5 years, made a commitment to trying to maintain a stable budget. And they've committed to not increasing their overall budget by greater than 3%. And for the most part, they've stayed to that. That doesn't mean that Groseal or any other community that's a customer of GLWA won't see an increase over 3% from GLWA because their overall budget is not going to increase by over 3%. But under GLWA, I think it's a lot better situation because there is some input from some of the customers. It's a more regional approach to the way that they manage it. So there has been some stabilization in the way that things are operated, I think. So,
all right, thanks, Derek.
What I'd like to refer to is to page 76. And that's the expenditure side of the water operations. What I will do at the end of my presentation, I've got a summary sheet that kind of summarizes the majority or the most of the changes between last year's and this year's budget per each account. But I want to kind of point some major items out here as it relates to water. We do have a fair amount of engineering that we have to do in the upcoming year. We have a reliability study that we have to do every 5 years, so I want to bring your attention down to account number 821000. You'll see that reliability study there at $46,000. That's a state requirement. We had also talked about the fund balance that we're drawing at $122.5. That's that drinking water asset management plan. That's the engineering that we applied for the grant for. So our hope is that that expenditure won't hit that account if we get that revenue in from that grant, which would end up making us an even balanced budget without drawing on fund balance for water. So I wanted to draw your attention to those two things. Another one I want to draw your attention to is account 806000, cross connection program. And this might be a small amount of money, but it is going to be impactful to our residents. Because I'm not sure if you're aware of what the cross connection program is, the state of Michigan requires that water providers maintain a cross connection program to prohibit or to try to avoid any contamination of the water system through a cross connection or a backflow into the system. So if we have a water main break, the water main goes dry, we can actually have negative pressure on the main, and water can actually get sucked out of the system, including your house, into the main. If you, for instance, have a sprinkler system, I could suck your sprinkler system dry, okay? If you don't have a backflow prevention piece of equipment on your sprinkler system that keeps me from sucking that water out of your system, that contaminated sprinkler water that was in your lines that are in the ground can go in my system. And when I repressurize, it can go through the system into people's homes and be consumed and cause problems. So there is a requirement at the state to not only have a industrial commercial cross-connection program, which we currently do, but there's also a requirement to have a residential cross-connection program and backflow prevention system. That means that our residents are going to have to work with the township in the foreseeable future with reviewing any potential cross-connections they might have in their home and keeping up and providing records to us about testing of their backflow prevention systems. So unfortunately, it will be an additional burden on our residents, but it is a state mandate that we have to start. We've submitted a proposal to the state phasing in this program over the next 3 years. There will be a cost associated with it. We've increased some of that line item within the budget to account for those expenditures. And talking with my staff, they've indicated that they would like to try to do that internally. But what this means is more than likely we'll be sending surveys to the residents, asking them if there are any conditions in their homes that present these cross-connection risks. And then moving forward, we'll have to inventory them, and we'll have to move forward with, after that, making sure on an annual or every other year basis that their systems are checked, they're tested, and they provide proof of that to the township so that we're in compliance with the state mandate. So it's a small budget item for us, but it is going to be a major change for our residents moving forward. So I want to bring your attention to that because there is no doubt in my mind that you will be getting feedback from our residents in the future about this program that's going to be implemented. So
pretty much as soon as we roll it, it rolls out.
Yep.
What did we figure out what the cost might be to them to get it certified?
So my experience has been that it in the interest of trying to save the residents as much money as possible, we would bid those services out, and then we would have a contractor that the residents could go to that would provide the most competitive pricing. Generally, $35 to $45 per test is what normally the cost is. So to short answer your question, but we would try to do our best to minimize that impact to the residents.
So I'm a little off the specific topic, but wouldn't it be an option for a resident to dig up the water main in their yard, put a check valve on it, and call it a day?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
Because not all homes have that risk. The check valve would be farther upstream of the risk. So just where the
I see.
sprinkler feed goes out into your yard, that's where your prevention system is.
Okay.
And most homes that have an outdoor sprinkler system that's fed by a municipal water source, they would have that already. We just need to make sure it's maintained and it's operational as it was originally intended when it was put in under the plumbing code.
Okay, that makes sense.
So it's just if you have a city water sprinkler system.
Or some other potential connection to an outdoor, like a pool or a spa,
Okay.
where there's a hose that feeds into it or something along those lines, where that water could be siphoned out of it
Or it's connected.
and into the
It's
system.
not a hose
Because there
connection.
isn't water
but-
sitting in your sink or toilet or bathtub that can backflow, right? It's not sitting in the lines there outside of
Yeah,
water lines.
it's mostly the contaminated outside water. So most of the time, you'll go to a home and they'll have a vacuum breaker and an outdoor faucet in case they have a hose that's running into a rain barrel or something like that. You know, that's common code for plumbing. But mostly we're worried about those permanent fixtures that might exist at a home that could cause those problems.
Okay.
And by and large, it's going to be the sprinkler system.
But that's the largest one. Yep. So, we do have a couple of pump houses which we need to replace roofs on. So that's a capital improvement we have listed in the project or in the budget here. We have a steel tractor trailer, semi-truck trailer that sits outside of our DPW garage. We'd like to get rid of that, clean that up, and replace that with a steel building. So there's some funding for that, just to clean up the yard. There is that need for that storage, so we don't want to eliminate it completely. We just want to replace it with something that's more permanent. We do have some reductions in our water main repair line items. We are doing a substantial water main project, which we hope to cause a reduction next year in some of our water main repair work that we're going to be doing. We have some aging meters and meter heads that were installed some time ago, so we've upped our budget line items as it relates to meter head replacement. So we're anticipating those increases in expenditures. And then as in the previous year, we do have some funding set aside for lead service line replacements, which is another state mandate that we're going to be dealing with over the next 4 years. We are required by state law to inventory any lead service lines that might exist in the community and then move forward with a replacement plan, having those all replaced by 2025. And that is at the cost of the community, at the cost of the township, not only from the main to the service box or the curb box, but actually all the way into the residence. So that is our responsibility. And there's a variety of reasons for why the state mandated that we do that. And if you have any questions, I can go into that a little bit, but I don't want to bore you with the details. We are going to be doing a substantial water main project that I appreciate you guys approving a couple of meetings ago. It's almost a $4 million water main project. That isn't shown in this budget with the exception of it being indicated as a principal and interest payment on the bond that financed or will be financing that project. So we obtained that bond, I think, probably about 18 months ago, that bond revenue about 18 months ago. So we're going to be putting that into action this upcoming summer with that motion that you guys made a couple of meetings ago. So as far as salaries, benefits, those type of things, we're not anticipating any change in staffing. We had a recent retirement, and we're replacing that individual with another individual that you authorized at the last meeting. There is some slight reductions in personnel cost associated with that, but obviously we have to take into account the retirement and the health care associated with that, and other OPEB benefits that impact the budget in the water account. Any questions about water? If there aren't any questions about water, I'd like to move to page 74, which is our sewer revenue. We talked a little bit about GLWA and the way that they charge for water. You have a fixed charge and you have a commodity charge. Our sewer account is very similar to the way GLWA charges for its services. You'll see under line 640000, we do have a service charge that's on our water bill, which could be considered and is often termed a readiness to serve. So that's where you see the $790 coming in. And then we have metered charges, which basically on a water bill, we anticipate a gallon in and a gallon going out. So we assume that your contribution to the sewer system is the same as your contribution or your use on the water side. We all know that's not necessarily the case. When you take a look at our wastewater treatment plant, they're treating way more gallons than we're selling as far as water is concerned, because there's a thing called I&I. But for the purposes of the way that we generate revenue, we're charging a unit in and a unit out. So that's where your meter charges are coming in. Because we do that way, and we're having an anticipated reduction in overall sales going down from 259 million down to 255 million. In order to maintain the same revenue that we were generating when we were at 259 million, there is a recommended slight adjustment to the sewer charge going from 416 to 424 next fiscal year to try to keep that budget line item as far as revenue flat. And you'll see we're just at 0.35% increase in revenue on the commodity charge.
And that's a 1,000-gallon unit as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. We are anticipating a reduction in penalties. What happened with COVID was due to the township hall being closed, the post office causing issues with people receiving their bills, the inability for people to see somebody and physically pay at a counter. Most municipalities, including us, suspended penalties on water bills for a period of time. We weren't sure how long that was going to last. We did reinstitute, as of February 1st, the penalty structure for our water bills, but there was a reduction in overall penalties for this current fiscal year, so we bumped it down a bit for next fiscal year. Although that doesn't obviously make up a large portion of our budget at a very small percentage. We are anticipating going into fund balance for the sewer account, and I'd like to go into that real briefly. We generate all of our revenue on this page for not only the sewer system, but also for our wastewater treatment plant. So when we look at revenue, we have to take a look at two expenditure accounts that are tapping that revenue. So the majority of this previous year resources is going towards capital improvements over the wastewater treatment plant, not necessarily to the sewer system that's in the ground leading to it, okay? And also, I want to draw your attention to bond revenue. So when we authorized the water main project a couple of meetings ago, that budget figure, that project figure was right around $3.8 million. We do have in excess of about $4 million in that bond revenue account. So we wanted to maintain some cushion in case there were cost overruns on the water main project, so we didn't want to spend all those dollars in addition to pick up the other leg of that project that would have put us over budget anyways. So what we're expecting is that we will not spend all of those dollars that are available in that bond revenue on either contingencies or other issues that might come up in the project. We do anticipate there will still be some dollars left over. That's where this $250,000 is coming in. That bond language allows us to use that fund for both water and sewer work. I've got this deficiency, or I've got these large capital improvements in the sewer account next year. My intent is to bring over that $250,000 into the sewer account and use it for those capital improvements. So that's where that 250 is coming from. Are there any questions on the sewer revenue side? Let's go to sewer expenditures. We're going to be looking at page 79. We've been having this long-term asset management plan that's been part of our budget for quite some time. Next fiscal year is no different than that. We had planned on televising and cleaning all the sewers on the island over, I believe, a 4-year period. we're planning on doing the appropriate amount within that schedule next fiscal year, and that's where you see this 150,000 under the 932,000. So cleaning and televising, that is cleaning and televising the system in the phase or the section that we have budgeted or scheduled for this year. They take that information, they do an analysis of it, and they build it into our asset management system. That's where that 25,000 is coming from, as well as that 35,000. And then the asset management plan, that's designing the overall asset management plan. And that once again, that was a 3-year program. So there's work associated with developing the capital improvement list, taking a look at other critical assets, doing the GIS work associated with the asset management plan. So a lot of these costs here you see in the maintenance and main repair are associated with that asset management plan for the sewer system. And once again, just like the water system, that asset management plan is a state mandate. The state's getting serious, and they have been over the past 3 or 5 years, with not allowing communities to put their heads in the sand with regards to their underground infrastructure. They said you need to start paying attention to this stuff, and we're going to mandate that you do. So that's what a lot of this is about. Anytime we do a section of pipe, if we review it, we clean it, televise it, and we find a problem, we fix it right on the spot if it's a serious problem. And that's where you see this capital outlay of sewer repairs at $140,000. I do want to touch on one small item. You'll see throughout all of these 7 budgets some allocations towards storage, office storage. One of the problems that we have in community development, in water, in sewer, in drainage, in roads, obviously in government in general, paperwork is a huge part of what we do. Record keeping is a huge part of what we do. We're kind of busting at the seams down in community development, down in water, down in sewer, down in roads, down in drainage. So we're putting some money aside next year to do some capital improvements with regards to adding some storage for us. So it's basically adding to our storage room in the back for our permanent files that we have to keep in order to become more organized down there and have the space that we need to keep these records. So you'll see that work kind of spread across all these accounts that it benefits for the upcoming fiscal year. So that's 986 for the sewer account. Once again, salaries, benefits, no staff changes relative to any of that. And I think when you were talking earlier about recreation, we do have a split with our personnel in water and sewer. So we allocate a certain percentage of salary and benefits to water and a certain amount of our salary and benefits to sewer. And I believe that's a 70-30 split, 70 to water, 30% to sewer. There are different employees that only work within a certain component, i.e. community development, where their costs are allocated completely to those entities. But we can get into that when we start talking about community development. Are there any questions with regards to sewer operations, which is everything but the plant? As we had talked about earlier, sewer expenditures, whether it's the plant or the stuff leading to the plant, all comes from one area. But we have to take a look at the treatment plant and those expenditures which draw on that revenue stream. So let's take a look at page 81. Just for the benefit of the residents, Groseal Township contracts with an entity, a private business, to operate the wastewater treatment plant. At the last township board meeting, or 2 township board meetings ago, we extended our contract with Suez. They're the ones that operate our plant. Their costs associated with their services are built into line item 803-100, and those are all contractual and scheduled. So we're able to anticipate those on an annual basis within our overtime. We have a variety of different operational expenditures, lab testing, sludge hauling that we have to account for in our budget. We did have a substantial reduction in cost last fiscal year from bidding out the sludge hauling services, so we've anticipated those costs with that contract extension. Once again you had talked about a couple of meetings ago, we have that allocated for at $105,000 for the next fiscal year. When we talked about how much money we were going to have to draw fund balance for the capital improvements over the wastewater treatment plant, that's where you see all these projects listed in 970000 capital outlay. The projects we plan on addressing the next fiscal year include HVAC improvements over at the wastewater treatment plant. That's basically an entire revamp of the HVAC conditions or the HVAC equipment over at the plant. As you can imagine, the plant is a very caustic environment. It's very corrosive in nature, so air handling and managing the HVAC system over there is very, very important and unfortunately very, very expensive. This has been a project that the township's been struggling with over the years to address, and finding the funding to do it correctly. So we've got some funding set aside, a substantial amount of funding set aside next year to review that. We're working on primary and secondary clarifiers currently over there. We probably about a month and a half, 2 months ago, discussed addressing the second primary clarifier. The installation of that second primary clarifier is budgeted for next fiscal year, but that equipment was purchased under this fiscal year. There are a variety of different expenditures that are listed here, but will more than likely be realized within this fiscal year, so that dollar figure will go down. That $1 million tag that we show within this budget will be less than that because it accounts for a fair number of capital improvements that were scheduled for this fiscal year but may not have been invoiced at the point that this budget was developed. So they can spill over into next fiscal year, so we've just tried to be as conservative as we possibly can with that budget figure. But rest assured, the dollars that are listed here would have been budgeted for last year but would not have been spent. So, as an aggregate to your budget, we won't exceed what we had planned. So I just wanted to make that known. Fortunately, we have a good operator over the plant, and they advise us annually of capital improvements that they view as necessary over there. The balance of what you see under this capital outlay account come from our operators' recommendations and our engineers' recommendations on capital improvements that we want to accomplish in the next fiscal year. So, and I would be not doing my job if I didn't bring up the ACO. We do have some engineering associated with the ACO included in the budget. We did a lot of engineering for the ACO in this fiscal year, and that's something that we're going to have to continually keep on our radar and obviously have discussions in the very near future, because that's on the horizon and something that we're going to have to find a way to fund, and it's a substantial dollar figure. So, stay tuned on that. There's nothing that we necessarily need to budget in next fiscal year associated with that, except for some of the engineering expense. But just keep in mind that's definitely a conversation we're going to have to be having. So, are there any questions with regards to the waste
ACO, I'm sorry.
administrative consent order? So,
Okay,
there are capacity mandates on our plant that the state has negotiated with us on with this administrative consent order. Those capacity issues have to be addressed with capital improvements. Capital improvements obviously have cost. Finding a way to finance those costs is something that we need to discuss. So, and we can talk more about that. Yep.
Derek, go ahead, Jim.
I was going to say that ACO started, negotiating that ACO started in 2012, and we actually were quite pleased that we finally got them to, when we got the ACO done, that we actually have, I think it's the actual tail end of that is 2027, so we got a lot of time. We do have millages dropping off, and that was one of our big things, looking at our millages and saying, these millages, give us the time, so these millages for the pipeline down Meridian would drop off, and we're going to be using that, but it won't increase our taxes to the residents.
Right,
so.
and to Jim's point, the township has done a very good job in trying to, and not just trying, but negotiating those terms with the state to make sure, to your point, that it doesn't negatively impact or severely impact the taxpayer, to try to make it as neutral as possible to the taxpayer. So, and that means taking a look at the full financial picture of the township, seeing what the millage rate is, what it will be, and then trying to work that cost into the overall taxation amount for the residents. So, but obviously we need to talk about all that strategy moving forward. That'll be something for a future day.
Not part of
for
this
tonight.
budget, but coming up.
Yep.
Derek, I'd just like to follow up on that for briefly. The administrative consent order ends the 2027, at least our part of costing that. That sewage treatment plant is right now over 50 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Between the ACO and an aging sewage treatment plant, what are we looking at 10 years down the road, 5 years down the road? And I understand it's a little off from where we are right now, but I'd like to know what your thoughts are on that briefly.
So there are a lot of other improvements that we need to do with the plant because it is aging. The intent was to try to treat those improvements as a much larger package with the ACO. So if we're talking about bonding, if we're talking about millages, addressing those expenditures as well, because we have like the intermediate lift pumps. Those are probably $1 million that we have to spend, $1 million to something along those lines. So I think the plan was just not to get too detailed into it, but looking at that as a total package, right, and addressing some of these real larger big ticket items, alongside the ACO work, and economies of scale, I think, plays into that. Especially if we're talking about bonding, doing it once rather than doing it 3 or 4 times has a lot of benefits. So there is a lot that needs to be done over there, but we're very aware of what needs to happen, and we'll try to do it in the most efficient way possible. So, if that answers your question, okay. And in the meantime, we're not sitting on our laurels either with regards to addressing those things that we can with the funds that we have available. And that's where you see this capital improvements list that's before you tonight. The primary and secondary clarifiers, making sure that those are in operation and operating well with new equipment. Those pieces of equipment that we're replacing are 30, 40, 50 years old. So the HVAC system is another one. Continually chopping away at, these capital improvements that are necessary over there. We're trying to do that both short and long term.
And although they're all big ticket items over there, he has no small, inexpensive toys.
Right. Yeah.
But they last a long time because they do. I mean, the over at the wastewater treatment plant as well as the water and sewers. They do a very good job of maintaining, so we're getting we get a good lifetime out of whatever we do.
And we recently had a maintenance audit done over there. We had an independent contractor come in, take a look at how things were being maintained. The longevity of some of the items that we have over there is pretty amazing that they've been able to keep them up and running for that long. So the maintenance has been good to Jim's point. And
I just look at the pumps and then the biodisc and all of those things that some of you have to tear the roof off in order to replace.
Yeah, they're like Jim had mentioned, there are no small ticket items over there. I think you tag wastewater treatment plants, any of those capital improvements, and all of a sudden you're talking 3-4 times, the dollar figure. So there aren't small pieces of equipment over there. I mean, you've got some pretty heavy duty stuff, so it comes with a big price tag. So. Any other questions with regards to the wastewater treatment plant? Let's go to refuse. And refuse revenue is on page... Expenses on 82.
75.
Just for knowledge sake, our refuse revenue comes in on the water bill side. So some communities charge refuse in the form of a millage. Groseal Township charges refuse in the form of a charge on the water bill. So when we charge on the water bill, it comes in as basically one charge it doesn't come in as one charge, but we've lumped it into one charge or one revenue stream on 640. Last year, we brought in revenue totaling $712,440. We had known, or we do know, or we had known in previous years that those charges were not adequate to meet the costs associated with refuse, providing refuse service. The account had a pretty substantial fund balance that it had built up, and generally it was great management. We were able to use that to subsidize some of the shortage that we had associated with the refuse system. But we did that because the refuse account isn't a capital intensive account, it's a service account where we pay for services. So there wasn't really a need to build this fund balance because we weren't using it to buy equipment. So we used it to subsidize and reduce the amount of increase that we wanted to, or not that we wanted to, but that we needed to charge our residents to be able to meet the costs associated with the service. Well, as of this fiscal year, that fund balance has been spent down. We've liquidated that fund balance that existed. As a result, we need to make adjustments to the rates in order to account for the charges or the cost of providing that service. So that's where you see this large increase in the overall service charges for refuse. And just to give you a breakdown on what that means, we're currently at $15 per month per home. Based on this budget, we would be going to $18.36 per home. So, and that's charged on the quarter, on your quarterly water bill. So that, at those revised charges, it would be a balanced budget. The revenue brought in would be $872,020. If we go to page 82, we can talk about where those dollars go. We have the major hitters when it comes to expense include our refuse contract. So this is listed as 801,000, and that refuse contract is our service through priority for picking up the waste. And then basically our dumping expense, which is our contract with Riverview Land Preserve, which is where our waste goes. The majority of these other line items within this account are fairly minor in comparison to those charges, with the exception of one item I want to point out. When we had negotiated the contract with whatever provider we were going to use, we said that the township would basically cover the cost of tolls associated with a bridge closure. What we didn't want was the vendors to put this gargantuous, inflated number on their bid associated with the unknown of tolls. So we said, well, we'll pay the actual cost and we'll incur that rather than pay potentially more than what we would if we weren't covering the actual. So that's why we have to account for tolls in the budget. And that number there is based upon what the actual toll rates have been year to date. $3,000 per month is about what average cost is for tolls for solid waste. I also do want to mention the DPS Commission did a very, very thorough job in analyzing, bidding the solid waste service. And this was probably we're going on maybe 14, 15 months ago. I will tell you that proposals from carriers that we had previously, Waste Management, and other providers that submitted proposals, we wouldn't be talking about a $15 per month to an $18.36 per month charge increase. We'd be talking about substantially more than that. You would see dollar figures in 81000, just the hauling of garbage, totaling amounts substantially greater than our entire budget just for hauling. So we'd be talking $1 million plus just for hauling. Right now we're talking $872,000 or thereabouts for the entire account. So There is, although an increase proposed, it is substantially less than what it would have been if the competitive bidding process hadn't been gone through and going through the motions of making sure we were getting the best price for our residents for the service. So,
How did they justify or would have justified the large increase?
It's a very good question. I want to answer that question by some additional information. The scope of service that they would have provided was substantially different as well. A lot of waste haulers are going to automated systems. They have been going to automated systems with dedicated containers. And it's only a cost savings and an operational benefit when the residents that they service put garbage only in those containers. So gone is your bulk service. Any bags, cans that do exist outside of that container will not be picked up. Those were some of the operational changes that were being mandated by some of the bidders that submitted for us. So I think, not to get too heavily into trash service business, but sometimes when your market no longer exists in an area, your logistical profit margins and so on and so forth are altered if you have one small orphan community in an area, if your business model or your market is somewhere else. So in those cases, what you do is you say, I'll give you a cursory or a bid that if you accept it, it's worth my while. If not, then, hey, you know what? Our market has changed. So there's some of that plays into it, as a variety of other things too. So, but anyways, that's the large change with waste hauling. We are going to be looking at an increase in order to account for making sure that we have a balanced budget for those services. Glass recycling still is maintained in this budget, and that's the container out here. And then the rest of the service provision doesn't change, in this current budget or in the proposed budget.
And glass recycling is being fully utilized, right? It's pretty much filling up every month and then some.
Yeah, we've got it budgeted for one haul every 3 weeks in this budget, which is about what we've been seeing. So yeah, and it's been pretty well received by the residents. There had been some talk from the DPS Commission about maybe going to a drop-off only type recycling program, because I think you really start maximizing the recycling, what you recycle and how it's recycled and the usefulness of it to the recycling entities or the vendors. We still need to look into that further because that would be a substantial change to the residents. And if it's going to be a change to the residents, we would want to also make sure that it's a change to our budget to the positive. And I don't know whether we can do that or not, because there is a cost, and whether that cost can be measured. I don't want to be coming to you and saying, hey, we eliminated curbside service, we went to a drop-off arrangement. The quantity that they're picking it up hasn't saved us any money. If anything, it's cost us more. So there has to be adequate protections in the budget to account for those risks. So those are things that we need to talk about yet.
Plus the other thing is who's using it.
Right.
You don't want to be charging all your residents and only a few using it.
Correct. Yep. There has to be
no matter how well it's used.
Yep.
If it's only a few, we have to figure out how to charge the ones that want it.
Yep, because everybody pays on their water bill regardless. So,
and the bulk recycling we do now has a higher rate of contamination than drop-off recycling, is why you're saying that it would be better received.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. The little blue bins, a lot of that just ends up in the
But doesn't that also mean that you'd have to have somebody there to monitor what goes in?
You have to figure it out.
So
you have to figure it out.
A lot of costs.
That's the risk. I mean, you got to make sure it's monitored in a certain way, and that it doesn't get overfilled, and that people aren't dumping things illegally. So there are some challenges with it, but I think DPS's position was, if the real goal is to try to get as much recycled as possible and put it into a useful purpose, a recycled purpose. The best way to do that is to have separated recycling.
Right.
Commingled streams, the profitability isn't there because the cost to separate it is so great. It's not worth what you're getting out of it. So that's
By far, the waste haulers that we interviewed all said going to the drop-offs, the people that use it, they drop off what should be, whereas the blue bins, some people they might be well intentioned, but they're throwing the contaminated stuff in there.
And it's just Groseal's no different than anywhere
Right.
else. It's just recycling in general because of the change in recycling, and the market for the product isn't there any longer.
Yeah.
So
A lot of communities have just gone away from recycling altogether. It's not worth it. So,
I'll try to wrap this up as quick as possible. Any further questions about refuse? If not, I'd like to go into just drainage really quick. Page 87. Drainage is supported by a millage. So you see coming in is listed under. I'm on page 87. 403 property taxes. We generate about $214,000 per year for drainage, and we do have a substantial fund balance in drainage. We're sitting at about $700,000. We do have a variety of different capital improvements that we have listed there. Really what we're looking at is one larger project that we would do in the fiscal year, and that's kind of TBD by DPS. So, and we've got a placeholder in there for about $350,000 to do a large drainage program or project. What we did find is last fiscal year we had a very effective ditching program that was very well received by the residents. The intent in next fiscal year was to actually double those dollar figures to try to help out, getting that project even farther along. And my plan, my intent, I think DPS would, I've found that they support it as well, is to continue to do this year over year and, steadily move through the community. A lot of these ditch lines haven't been improved in forever. Culverts are blocked. They're so full of junk, nothing flows. It helps out immensely with getting the water where it needs to go, and it's been a good program. It was very well received last year, and we'd like to expand that. We do maintain a drainage grant program. That's under 811300. That's consistent. Those dollar figures are consistent with what we had last year. And that, once again, is very well received by the residents. We offer a grant match up to $5,000. We cover 50% of the cost of the project, as long as there's a community benefit. It addresses a drainage issue on a parcel, and residents apply for that. And it's a first come, first serve grant project or program. Our engineers get involved to make sure the project actually works, and we're pretty much at $75,000 at this point in the fiscal year for the projects that we've awarded. So, any other questions with regards to drainage? Last but not least, road improvement fund. Once again, this is funded by a millage that the residents graciously renewed this past election. We bring in about $260,000 per year for road maintenance work. Major projects that we do annually in the road improvement fund, dust control, which all of our residents who live on dirt roads really appreciate that. That budget figure hasn't changed for next fiscal year. The Wayne County Priority Road Service, it's being recommended by the DPS Commission to move forward again next year with that. Snow plowing and winter maintenance, that's for our facilities. And then our emergency winter road program, which when we had that eight inches of snowfall about a month or so ago, this is where those dollars come from. And I know the residents really appreciated that. It helped to get the snow off the residential roads because the county does not plow those, so people can get to work and kids can get to school. We're not salting. We're just moving the snow so people can get out of their driveways. It helps down the road too, especially we don't get that snow packed down on the roads, and it gets removed so it can melt off via Mother Nature. So that has been very well received. We don't have a ton of discretionary dollars from the next fiscal year in the road improvement fund after kind of these annual expenditures. We have about $116,000 that we'll use next year for maintenance-related work, whether this is crack sealing seal coating, chip sealing. At that dollar figure, it's very difficult to really do a lot of paving work, just because it's by the time you get a crew in here to mobilize, you really don't have much money to put actually on the road. But DPS will come forward, I'm sure, with a project for those limited dollars within the next fiscal year. So
they do every year. I think we heard from Wayne County that probably won't be a matching
right
fund program, so we won't be getting any large amount from them this year.
To Jim's point, in previous years, the county would come to us and allocate or provide some Act 51 dollars that we would then match to try to do residential roads. But they've made it known that with the source of the funding for the bridge repairs being Act 51, the ability to do some of those projects are going to be limited, and the local road program is one of the low-hanging fruits that's going to be a casualty, I think, of that. So.
What about, and again, this is a question, it may not be for a budget meeting, but obviously the roads are in pretty rough shape, right? And they're getting a lot worse. What about utilizing some of your reserve money in various places? Can we move that around, or can't be done?
Only general fund is discretionary.
Just the general fund?
And the roads account does have some fund balance, but it's pretty minor as it relates to, how much work is out there to be done. I think we're sitting at right around $350,000.
Yeah,
so.
and road, our roads, the repair it needs is a big project, hopefully we'll have some kind of program in mind by the end of the year.
Are there any questions with regards to roads? Ann, are you going to cover community development?
I can, yeah.
I can cover it if you want. It's up to you.
If you just want to talk about revenues,
Sure.
you can do that. Where you see community development as far as revenues and
You have their page numbers. I don't think
page 9.
I don't think community development was in my packet, but
Page 9.
all I got is 72 through.
Oh, I probably
And
did.
why don't you just
I'll just
handle
do it. Yep.
Just
You're
let
good.
Ann do
Yep.
it.
Okay.
We'll just go ahead and do it.
Thank you, Derek.
Thanks, Derek.
Thank you.
Yep.
Derek, good job.
Keep the water flowing.
I'll try my best.
Yeah, you'll hear about it if you don't.
So as you've seen, those were some of the major funds that are that we have that have the big dollar amounts. In the back of your budget book, I'm not going to go through them all, but there are different, like the library, which is a millage. There's a budget for that. There's different budgets from pages 83 through. And we can go over some, and then we'll go to general fund, really the quickly of it. Page 83, there's a separate little fund for public safety maintenance. The revenues are obtained through the cell towers. So we have kind of put stuff away to maintain things. You always get something, and so the cell tower revenues are here as well as they are in the Centennial Farm to help. There was no means of revenue for those, so it's a way of protecting the asset and putting money back into it. So that's what this fund is about. So there's about $192,000 that'll be available for public safety for major repairs, not the ones that are in their budgets 50-50, but if there's anything major going on, that's where the money will come from. Page 84 is open space. We are currently collecting no property taxes for open space or the open space maintenance program. Those millages have expired, but there are balances that are still in the accounts. As far as the open space purchase, there's about $150,000 left in that account for future open space purchases. And the open space maintenance, there's about $225,000 left in that fund. And that's basically for, if you look down, it's for trail maintenance, for trees, that come into the road, and there's reserve for future maintenance. If we go to page 85, this is the DDA budget, so this is separate as well. That's basically Macomb Street, and it accounts for all the events and the improvements down Macomb Street. And I know a big deal has been the grant program has helped Macomb Street, so this is just the budget that helps out the Macomb Street area and the different things that encumbrances it. There's a block grant fund. It's about $20,000 that the Recreation Department gets for senior services. So that's what that's about. He already did this drain one. Library, we do pay to the Trenton Library. There's 5 communities that make up the Trenton Library, and our portion of the Trenton Library based on usage is about $130,000 a year for those services. He talked about roads on 89. So on 90, 91, these are our debt funds. So we do have debt out there, just to let everyone know, for the new board members. Since my 25 years here, we've probably put people thinking we're not spending any money on roads or we're not spending any. We have spent on the water system, sewer and water. We've probably bonded about $70 million over the past 25 years of doing water mains and sewer mains. So there has been capital projects that have been going on, and some have been paid off and some are going to be paid off in the future, near future. So in my time here, I'm actually going to see these come to an end, I hope. So, and so you can see, and these are incorporated within the water fund. So page 90 is the water, which all those were in the water side of it, so it was almost $1 million of principal and interest. In the sewer side, there's $387,000 that was budgeted on the sewer portion of it. And also on page 92, which is incorporated in the general fund, there is a debt still owing on the Township Hall that we're standing in. That will mature in 2025, as well as the Water's Edge restaurant that was added. And that bond will mature in 2025. So we're getting close to their maturity. So those will be dropping off soon, which is nice for long-term budgeting. And then on page 93, these are our big sewer separation projects. This is the SSES. It's on the tax bill as well as the judgment bond. So these bond payments annually are a little over $3 million. This is where our big summer tax of the 4.0 millage and the 1.1 with the 0.9 millage is on. So these will be dropping off. You can see the judgment bond drops off in 27, and these bonds came in stages, so they'll be dropping off in 22, 24, and 25. So that's what Jim was talking about when we go to look at where our debt is, and before we start taking out additional debt, we'd like these to start falling off so it doesn't reflect the taxpayers are not seeing a huge increase in their tax bill. So we'll go back to those. So in the front of your pages, so page 1 is our millages. These are the different millages, and they're all contained within different funds because they're held separately, because a millage as a general law township has to be spent on what people voted for. I just want to show you something kind of that came to my attention. I was like, oh my gosh. So if you can see this, I just went back for taxable value. Really, we haven't increased our taxes at all. What we were looking at is our taxable value, and obviously this is dedicated by what the state demands that we do, or based on our taxable value. So this is dictated by the state. We have no control over our taxable value. So when we look at our taxable value, in 2006, I mean, in my time, when I started in 1995, it was constant that the taxable value would just increase. It always did. It was always, you always ended up with more money than you thought, and life was good, right? So that went on till 2008. And the highest our taxable value has ever been was $680 million. And then that's when that decline hit. And look how fast, in 3 years, 4 years, 2011, 2012. So it dropped like almost, let's see, like it was like 25% in like just a couple years. Now, because of Proposal A, it cannot increase more than inflation. So now that we hit rock bottom, it is going up. It started to do a turn, right? But look how slow it's going up. When you think about it, we are living in 2006 values. So imagine your household. Imagine not getting a raise since 2006. We're not raising people's taxes. It's nothing to do with the township. We're not collecting. People are not still paying as much as they were in 2006. So we are living within our means of 2006. So when I went to do this, we truly are. So here's our budget and actual. When we're presenting you this budget, this is general fund, our actual is pretty much our actual. When we do these budgets, it's not way out of line. We're within the last couple of years, we are within thousands of dollars of a $5 million budget. So when we're presenting these, we're not over, it pretty much is what it is. And I've been saying that for a long time. Sometimes, you know what? It just is what it is. So I just thought those were just eye-opening as I went through this. So we can go back and look at, I know it's getting late. I don't want to go crazy here. So within the budget, obviously, page 2 is our wage and salary chart. So we are people. We provide service. So a lot of these budgets that you've seen is 80%, other than the DPW, of course, is people, is salaries and wages. Just a little history. So I just wanted to give you that, and a lot of people in the organization is based on contracts. So we have a POAM contract, which is our police department, and then we have a union contract, which is all our other places. We have a administrative union and a maintenance union, and then we have non-union people. So if you look over a 20-year span, you can see the average increases of wages. And then if I took the CPI of inflation over the same period, you see that it's just about the same. So we are paying people basically incorporated within the budgets is based on CPI for the past 20 years. A lot of the things incorporated within the budgets is obviously healthcare and retirement are our big issues. Healthcare, we've pretty much contained. We've changed healthcare over the last couple of years. It is basically keeping up with a 3% cap, which is demanded by the state. So we chose to do the healthcare cap, and it raises about 3%, and that's what the township is allowed to pay. So if you look at all the budgets, pretty much healthcare is stabilized out, other than people, new people, old people, adding babies, whatever. For the most part, the premiums have only increased by a 3%. So that we've contained. On page 3 is our MERS statement for the year. And obviously we talk about our unfunded liability as far as it pertains to our pension thing. I shouldn't talk like that, but as our pension, but it's getting late. So anyway, when we look at the pension statement for the year, you really look at it changes drastically in any given day, every given year. So at last year in the audit, where you're basing off on 19, remember we have to reach that 60%. If we don't, the state gets mad at us because we didn't reach the 60%. So as of 2019, we were holding about almost $22 million. if you look in the year, so we were right close to the 60%. So hopefully this year, it says draft over it, but we're a little over $24 million. So I'm hoping we hit the 60%. And if you can see, we almost made $3 million in this period for the year. So it just fluctuates so much. So when we talk, we're so close to that 60%. But we are paying everything we need to pay. And it's just an example of how much it fluctuates in any given year.
Yeah, and I want to reemphasize that. We have been making every payment that we are told to make.
And yes.
It's the difference, that fluctuation being over 60, under 60, is strictly based on the assumptions that change. And we are, MERS is going through decreasing the number of years to amortize, so that automatically increases our cost every year. And I think, I don't know if we're at 20 years or 18, whatever, but they're going down to 15 years. So till we hit 15, there's going to be an automatic increase for us. And then it's then any other assumptions they change and what the fund balance does.
Exactly. It's a moving target.
I have a question on page 2, just to make sure I fully understand this page. So what you're showing here is the 20-year average of pay increases for employees, starting with the non-union employees in column 1, the union employees, and the police officers, correct? Okay. Do you know what the average cost per employee is? Are you guys capturing?
No, I mean, I do have it. I don't have it at hand.
Right. I'll get it
for
from
sure.
you later, Ann. I'm just curious.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. The MERS statement. And then is...
Ann, can I ask you a question about the MERS statement? So we have 23.6 million, roughly, total balance.
Down the bottom, 24, whatever at the bottom where it's draft.
Okay, I can't see
that's
it.
sitting
It
there.
says draft on it. Okay.
Yes.
So if you divide that by 0.6, we get like 38 million. So what is the total? Is it right around 38 million?
The
What's the 100%?
The 60%.
We're at 60.
60%
so our
23.
What's not on here is the liability.
Right, the liability.
Total.
Yeah. So our unfunded is what, we're at 15 unfunded? Yeah, about 38, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And then really, obviously, if we go to our general fund, which is our discretionary fund, which contains mostly the police department, is we look at the budget. So we can, basically, I want to show you is page 6 is really our driving force behind revenue. The general fund does not have a lot of sources of revenue. The only sources would be our property taxes that we looked at. It's like 3.8 million. Franchise fees are basically, we shouldn't be franchise fees, but it's basically our cable fees from WOW, Comcast, and AT&T. So, it's kind of funny with COVID, they actually went down because people have been finding other means, Netflix and different things to watch, as they're not buying the cable. They're not using the cable as much as they used to. State share revenue is what we get from the state of Michigan. It is based on sales tax. So that has declined based on people weren't spending. So that has actually went down. Then our other thing our general admin fees is what we internally, most communities charge a 1% admin fee on their tax bill. If you guys are familiar with most other communities, on the bottom of their tax bill would be a 1% admin fee. Groseal Township has decided not to ever do that route. So what we do to help general fund is we charge an admin fee internally to all the other funds. Like for DPW, it's a 4%. For airport, it's 4%. All the other tax entities, we charge 2%, basically to collect their taxes and maintain their funds. So that's what we choose to do instead of going outside to the public and adding a 1% admin fee. Then we just get interest, and this year in the budget to help it work, we do have miscellaneous income of $100,000, which is we're considering selling township property. So it's an option. There are some people inquiring, so we did put that in the budget to help balance the budget. So really, you can see our tax value only went up 86,000. So as Mr. Jarecki was saying, yes, we are very close for what taxes are not raising as much as we need to. We know that the pensions, so basically our health care is going up 3%, our pensions going up on average 7%. So when you take those into account, we get very close to what general fund is. And we did balance general fund this year. If you look at we do keep separate cost centers. We talked about the police. Another revenue generating source of the general fund is the building department, but the building department has to maintain their selves. We're not allowed to subsidize, and they're not allowed to subsidize us. So you have to charge enough for the building department. So basically,
Community development.
Community development is an in and out, because they have to charge rates that will support that department. So we are not gaining from them or losing from them. We kind of keep them separate so they do balance. And then really general fund helps take care of all the other administration. I'm just going to go through the pages. There's no really big changes in here. Like I said, the police department's the biggest portion of the budget. It takes care of the board. We take care of the supervisor. I'm just doing the cost centers. General fund, township managers budget. The township manager's budget. I just want to draw your attention on page 14. We did have to increase the labor relations because this year the POAM contract expires. So there will probably be negotiations in that number. So we boosted that up a little bit. On page 15, we have no election scheduled this year. So in the event that we would need to, we would have to relook at the election schedule. Clerk's office, there's really nothing there. Everything pretty much the same. Finance department, that's me, pretty much the same. The assessor, they're just all departments that we have to maintain. We don't get it. We can't earn revenue though. That's our bad part. Treasurer's office, building and maintenance. So there on page 22 is the township hall bond payment. That's required. I know I'm going fast, but there's really, and then we got the police department that we already went over. And we got community development, which I said is just basically in and out. We do all the communications department is a separate section that we do there. I think he's got some equipment that might need to be purchased. We do all the professional services for all the different areas. Legal, engineering, budget, the audit. I have to do my actuarial retiree valuation this year. And then 895, which is just retiree health care, insurance and bonds. And so it's like I said, it's your general fund is only your discretionary. We are proposing a balanced budget for general fund. So yeah, I am available. I know it's a lot of stuff, and I know, there's probably plenty of questions, and we can go over anything. Just give me a call, and we can sit down too for those that are new.
Yeah, again, I want to reiterate that, there have been times that we would have this study session before our meeting, So maybe 45 minutes.
Right.
And then go into the meeting and be voting on our budget. And I believe doing this, and I plan on doing this in the future, that we have a separate session like this.
Absolutely.
Do it early, go home, you guys can look at your binder, look at your budget. You always, a day or two later, always come up with, I didn't ask this, or I look at a line and say I want it. You're going to have the time to do it, and properly so. And like I say, if depending on a department, you can call the department head. You can certainly talk to Ann. We're right now we're planning on approving the budget in our March 22nd meeting. When do we have to actually have it approved? The end of March? Before April 1st?
Before April, or we're gonna shut her down. I think we are only threatened to shut down once.
So I encourage you to, take your time, take a look at it, and get back with questions. And I like doing this because you do have the time to really, now that you've heard the people talk about various things, that helps make some of these things make more sense, but it also gives you the time to generate your questions.
Good process.
Oh.
I don't know how you did it quicker. But it's a good process.
All right. Anybody?
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you guys for coming in. Uda and I see Joe left, but Uda, thank you. Thank you for us for being with us. We will
Thank you for
talk.
accommodating.
Ready.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Good night.
Yep. Very good. Yeah, I now give you a call. Long, but good. Yeah.
Right, yeah.